Story 1.
I'm sure you've already read his story. I'm the monster. The liar, the cheater, the woman with 2 lives who blew up his world. I've seen the comments. I know what you think of me. And I'm not here to say I didn't do it. I did. Every single thing he said I did is true. I just need you to understand why. People don't just wake up one morning and decide to be a terrible person. It's a slow process. You die a little bit every day until you'll do anything just to feel alive again. I was 17 when I got married. 17. I didn't even know what I wanted for dinner most nights, but I stood in a church and promised my entire life to someone. Before I had a chance to figure out who I was already wife. A year later, I was mother. My whole identity was gone before it ever formed. My own name started to sound weird in my head. It wasn't my name anymore. It was a label for the person who made lunches, did the laundry, and planned holidays. My dreams, the silly little ideas I had about what my life could be, got packed away in a box in the attic like old clothes I'd never fit into again. My husband isn't a bad man. He wasn't abusive or cruel. He was just the man in charge. He was the one who built the box I lived in. Our families knew each other forever. Our lives were so tangled together it was impossible to see where one ended and the other began. Leaving wasn't an option. How could I? I'd be destroying everything for our parents, for our friends, and most of all for our son. He deserved a happy family, a mom and a dad under one roof. I couldn't be the one who took that away from him. Then my husband had an affair. He calls it an emotional affair, but what does that even mean? He was giving a part of himself to someone else, a part that he hadn't given me in years. The nights he spent on his phone, smiling at the screen, left a cold spot in our bed that felt bigger than an ocean. That was it for me. Something inside me, something that had been asleep for a decade, just broke. But I still couldn't leave. I was a coward. So when a temporary work assignment came up, a 2-year post on the other side of the country, it felt like God was giving me a secret exit. It wasn't a job opportunity, it was a lifeboat. I told my husband it was for our finances, a chance to get ahead. He agreed. I packed my bags and I left Em behind in that quiet house with her duties and her broken heart. On the plane, I made a decision. I wasn't M anymore. I was A. A was a new person. A didn't have a husband or a son. A had no history she didn't want. A was finally just herself. And it was the most terrifying and incredible feeling I'd ever had. I never planned to meet him. There wasn't some grand plan to have an affair. I was just trying to breathe. But he was there at a work dinner a few weeks after I arrived. He was funny and smart, and when he looked at me, he actually saw times me. Not a wife, not a mother, just a woman. A. He asked me about my favorite movies, my thoughts on politics, my stupidest childhood memory. For the first time since I was a teenager, someone was interested in who I was, not what I did for other people. The lies came out so easily. I'm divorced. It felt true in a way. The M, who was married, felt like a different person. No kids. That one hurt. It felt like a betrayal to my son, but it was a necessary lie to keep this new world safe. Each lie was a brick I placed in the wall between my 2 lives. I was so careful to keep them separate. And for 2 years I was happy. Genuinely, truly happy. It was a stolen happiness, but it was mine. We built a life together. We adopted a dog. We spent weekends hiking and lazy Sunday mornings reading the paper in bed. I felt love for who I was, or at least for the person I desperately wanted to be. But the guilt was always there, eating away at me. Once a month I had to fly back. I told him it was a required work trip to the head office. I'd get on the plane as A and get off as M. The change was so jarring it felt like physical pain. I'd walk into my old house, and the smell of it, the sight of my son's toys on the floor would make my stomach twist into knots. I'd hug my son, and his pure, unconditional love felt like a hot poker against my skin. How could I do this to him? I'd sleep in the same bed as my husband, feeling like a ghost haunting someone else's life. All that shame and guilt would curdle inside me. I couldn't let it out in M's world, so it would explode in A's. When I'd get back to him, I'd be a wreck. I'd pick fights over nothing. I'd get angry if he was 5 minutes late. I'd push him away, trying to make him hate me. I was screaming at him without words to just times leave me asterisk. I knew I was a bomb, and I was trying to get him out of the blast zone. I was trying to save him from me. But I was too weak, too selfish. I was addicted to feeling. Seen to feeling like A, and I couldn't bring myself to end it. Of course it couldn't last. A house built on lies will always fall down. He started noticing things. A piece of mail that came with my real name on it. An old photo tag on social media from a family friend. He asked why he'd never met any of my friends from back home, why my divorce paperwork was so complicated I couldn't talk about it. Each question was a fresh wave of panic. I'd lie more, making up crazier stories, digging myself deeper and deeper. I kept telling myself that if he just knew the truth about how trapped I was, he'd understand. But that was a fantasy. I had lied about everything that mattered. The day he ended it, it felt like my whole world collapsed. He told me he knew. He didn't have all the details, but he knew I wasn't who I said I was. He was done with the secrets. Losing him was like losing the only part of myself that felt real, I begged. I cried. I sent him long, rambling texts trying to explain. I even posted an old picture of us online, a stupid, desperate move to remind him of what we had. It was ugly and pathetic. He blocked me everywhere. There was just silence. For a week, I lived in that silence floating through my empty apartment. The life I built as A was gone. And I knew it was only a matter of time before the life of M was gone too. I had given him all the power. He knew my real name. He knew the city I was from. It wouldn't be hard to find my husband. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart would stop. I was just waiting for the explosion. This morning it came. Not as a loud bang, but as a quiet, simple text message on my screen. It was from my husband. It just said, "We need to talk." Now. I stared at the 3 words on my screen. We need to talk. It wasn't angry. It wasn't accusatory. It was worse. It was final. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely unlock my phone again to call him. I knew I couldn't do this over text. I owed him a voice, a face. I hit the video call button, my heart pounding in my throat like a trapped bird. He answered on the second ring. He was in his home office, the one I'd helped him paint a soft gray 3 years ago. His face was blank. There was no rage, no tears, just nothing. It was the face of a man looking at a stranger, and it was the most terrifying thing I had ever seen. "Hi," I whispered. My voice sounded thin and stupid. He didn't say hello back. He just held up his phone to the camera. On his screen was an email. I could see photos. A picture of me and him, the other him grinning on a hiking trail. A screenshot of a text where I said, "I love you." A picture of us with a dog we adopted together. Proof. An entire 2-year life condensed into a single neat package of betrayal delivered straight to my husband's inbox. "He sent this about an hour ago," my husband said, his voice flat. "He included your real name, my work email." He was very thorough. The air left my lungs. I opened my mouth to speak, but what could I say? The lies were all there in color. The first instinct, the stupid animal one, was to deny it, to say it was fake. But looking at his empty eyes, I knew it was useless. The game was over. I started and my voice broke. "I can explain." "Can you?" he asked, and it was a real question. There was no sarcasm in it. "Can you explain a he called you A? Is that what you called yourself?" I just nodded, tears starting to stream down my face. "It's not what you think," I said, the oldest, weakest excuse in the book. I tried to tell him everything. About feeling like a ghost in my own life. About being 17. About his emotional affair, feeling like the final nail in the coffin. I tried to explain that A wasn't about finding someone else, it was about finding myself. The words just sounded hollow and selfish as they came out of my mouth. I was trying to explain the color blue to a blind man. How could he possibly understand? He listened patiently. He didn't interrupt. When I was done a pathetic sobbing mess, there was a long silence. "So you built a new life," he finally said, his voice still terrifyingly calm. "You felt trapped, so you ran away and pretended none of this me, our son, existed. For 2 years. He shook his head slowly. "The affair, what I did, was wrong. It was a crack in the foundation. But you didn't try to fix it. You took a sledgehammer to the whole house, and then you went and built a new one somewhere else." "I'm sorry," I sobbed. "I am so sorry." "I know you are," he said. "You're sorry you got caught." And that was it. That was the truth. He saw right through me. I waited for him to yell, to scream, to tell me he was filing for divorce, that I should never see our son again. I braced for the explosion, but it never came. "Here's what's going to happen," he said, and his tone shifted. It became businesslike. "Your assignment is over. You're going to quit that job and you're coming home. This weekend." I was stunned. "What?" "We are not getting a divorce," he stated, like it wasn't up for discussion. "I am not going to be the one to tell our son that his mother and father are splitting up because she had a secret second family. I will not blow up his world because of what you did. I will not destroy our parents and our families with this. We built this life for 15 years. It's a mess, but I'm not lighting the match." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He wanted me to come home. We were going to stay together. A tiny, sick flicker of hope lit up inside me. And he must have seen it on my face because his expression hardened. "Don't misunderstand me," he said, his voice turning to ice. "This isn't forgiveness. I don't think I can ever forgive you. A is dead. That life you had is over. You're going to come back here, and you are going to be a mother to your son and a wife to me, at least on the outside. We will be civil, we will be parents. But us, what we were, that's gone. You killed it. This is a business arrangement now. The business of raising our child in a stable home. Do you understand? I understood perfectly. This wasn't a second chance. It was a life sentence. The next few days were a blur. I packed up A's apartment, a place that had felt more like home than anywhere else on earth. Each thing I put in a box felt like a betrayal. The coffee mug he gave me. The stupid poster we bought at a street fair. I took the dog to a shelter, crying so hard in the car that I could barely see the road. I was erasing a person. I was erasing myself. Flying home was the opposite of my flight out 2 years ago. Then I was flying toward freedom. Now I was flying back to my prison. Life now is quiet. So quiet. We live in the same house, but we're a million miles apart. We don't fight. We don't argue. We barely speak unless it's about our son, what he needs for school, who is taking him to soccer practice. We sleep in the same bed, but we stay on our own sides, a giant freezing canyon between us. Sometimes at night I wake up and I can feel him staring at the ceiling, and I know he's thinking about it. About her. About A. He never brings it up. He never calls me a liar or a cheater. He just looks at me sometimes with those same empty eyes from the video call, and I know he sees it all. He doesn't see M, his wife. He sees the liar. He held up his end of the bargain. He told everyone my assignment ended early, and we were so happy to have me home. Our families were thrilled. Our son was ecstatic. On the outside, we are the perfect family. We go to barbecues, we host Christmas. We smile for pictures. It's all a perfect, beautiful lie. And me, I don't have A's freedom, and I don't have the simple, ignorant peace of the old M. I'm just trapped in the wreckage. I destroyed a good man's heart, the man I was cheating on and the man I was cheating with. I broke everything I touched. He was right. I am sorry. I got caught. But that's not the whole truth. The most twisted, horrible part of all of this is that deep down in a place I can never ever say out loud, I miss her. I miss A. Because she was the only one who ever got to be real.
Story 2.
Look, I know how this sounds. I'm the guy who cheated the villain of the story. I get it. But you're only hearing one side of it, the side from some kid in a call center who blew up my entire world and thinks it's a funny story to tell his mates. You don't know what it was like for me. You don't know what it was like living in that house. The house I shared with Amanda hadn't been a home for years. It was a museum of a dead marriage. We had the nice furniture, the landscape garden, the 2 cars in the drive. From the outside, we were the perfect couple. But inside, there was nothing. Just silence. It was a heavy, suffocating silence that filled every room. We didn't fight. Fighting requires passion, and we'd run out of that a long, long time ago. We just coexisted. We were roommates who shared a mortgage and a last name. We'd ask, "How was your day?" without waiting for an answer. We'd watch TV in the same room without ever looking at each other. I felt like I was slowly turning to stone. Then I met Emily. It wasn't planned. I wasn't out looking for an affair. It just happened. She was a consultant on a project at work, and we just clicked. Talking to her was like taking a deep breath after being underwater for 10 years. Everything was easy. We laughed. We talked for hours about everything and nothing. She saw me, the real me, not the gray ghost I'd become at home. With her, I felt alive again. What started as a coffee turned into a lifeline. We both knew it was more than just a fling. We were falling in love, and we started to talk about a future. A real future together. It felt terrifying and exciting all at once. For the first time, I could see a way out of the gray fog I was living in. We decided to do it. We decided to build a life. It wasn't a rash decision. We spent months planning everything meticulously. I wanted to leave Amanda, but I wanted to do it with as little drama as possible. I know that sounds stupid now, but I genuinely believed we could have a quiet, civilized separation. I'd move out, we'd sell the house, and we'd go our separate ways. No shouting matches, no public humiliation. Just a sad, quiet ending to something that had been over for years. Emily and I found a small flat to rent a place just for us. We put the deposit down with money I'd been saving for years. It was our fresh start. We started buying little things for it. A kettle, some towels, things that would make it ours. The very last piece of the puzzle was setting up the utilities. The important stuff. Gas, electric, and the internet. I found this top-tier package online. Super-fast broadband, all the TV channels, a phone line. It was expensive, over £100 a month, but it didn't matter. This was for our times home. It was a statement. It was the foundation of the new life we were building. It was real. I called the company on my lunch break on a Friday, trying to be discreet. I was in my car in the office car park, whispering into my phone. The guy who answered sounded about 12. He went through the script, asked a million questions. Then he got to the credit check and said it would take a while. I didn't have a while. I had to get back to my desk. "Look, mate, I'm in a bit of a rush," I said. "Can you just call me back on Monday to finish this?" "Sure," he said. "I'll call the number on the application." My blood went cold. The number on the application was my home number. Amanda's number. "No," I said, maybe a little too sharply. "Do not call that number. Call me back on this new mobile." I read him the number for the phone Emily and I were going to use for the flat. I made him read it back to me twice. "Got it," he said. "And listen," I added, trying to think of a simple way to handle this. "It's a new phone, it might be off. If a woman answers, her name is Emily. Just ask to speak to Steve. That's me." "Got it, ask for Steve." "If Emily answers, ask for Steve." "Simple enough," he said. It was a simple, clear instruction. Foolproof. Or so I thought. I hung up, feeling relieved. That was it. The last piece was in place. By Monday afternoon, our new home would be fully connected to the world. The future was so close I could almost taste it. That Monday was one of the best days of my life. I'd taken the day off work. I met Emily at the new flat. The sun was streaming through the windows of the empty living room. We had a tape measure and a notepad, and we were planning everything. Where the sofa would go, which wall the TV would be on. We were giddy laughing and dreaming about our future. We ordered a pizza and ate it sitting on the floor, making plans for the rest of our lives. For the first time in over a decade, I felt completely, utterly happy. I felt free. Everything after so much careful planning was finally going to be okay. And then my phone started buzzing. Not a single call, but a frantic non-stop vibration against the floorboards. I ignored the first one. Probably a sales call. But then it buzzed again. And again. I glanced at the screen. A string of missed calls from Amanda, followed by a wall of text messages. Asterisk. Where are you, asterisk? Asterisk. Who the hell is Emily? Asterisk. Asterisk. Some company just called about broadband for you and Emily. Asterisk. Asterisk. Pick up. Your phone, you bastard. Asterisk. My blood turned to ice. It was like the floor had dropped out from under me. Emily saw the look on my face. Steve, what is it? You're white as a sheet. I couldn't answer. I just stared at the screen, my mind scrambling to make sense of it. Asterisk, broadband for you and Emily. Asterisk, there was only one explanation. The kid. The call center kid. He hadn't called the number I gave him. He hadn't followed the one simple instruction. My hands were shaking as I called Amanda back. She picked up on the first ring. It wasn't even a hello, just a raw, guttural scream of pure rage. Who was she? Amanda, calm down, let me explain. Explain? Some little prick just called here asking for you. Said he was setting up your new life with Emily. At a new address. Are you kidding me, Steve? Are you actually that stupid? She was spitting the words out, each one laced with a decade of unspoken resentment that had finally found its voice. Emily's name sounded like poison coming from her mouth. I couldn't think. I couldn't breathe. My careful plan, my quiet, dignified exit, it was all gone. Detonated. In one stupid, careless moment, some kid I'd never met had handed my wife a loaded gun and told her exactly where to point it. The whole world had been torched, and I was standing in the middle of the fire. I have to go, I mumbled and hung up. I looked at Emily, whose face was a mask of confusion and fear. He called the house, I said, my voice barely a whisper. He called Amanda. The understanding dawned in her eyes, followed by the horror. The happy bubble we'd been in just moments before popped, leaving nothing but the cold, hard reality of the mess he'd made. The dream was over. The nightmare had just begun. I saw red. Pure, blind rage. This wasn't just a mistake. This was a violation. This kid had taken a crowbar to my life for no reason at all. I had to talk to him. I had to make him understand what he'd done. I snatched up my phone and dialed the company's number, my thumb jabbing at the screen. A young woman answered, her voice all polite and cheerful. Thank you for calling. How can I help you today? I didn't care about politeness. Get me the idiot who just called my wife and blew up my marriage, I snarled. There was a stunned silence on the other end. I'm sorry, sir. "Don't play dumb with me," I roared. I was pacing the empty room like a caged animal. "One of your staff just ruined my life. I want to speak to him. Now." I was shouting, completely losing it. I knew I was scaring her, but I didn't give a damn. My life was in pieces. Her feelings were not my priority. "Let me see who handled your account, sir," she stammered. I heard frantic typing, then a click. A new voice came on the line. A familiar, smug-sounding young man's voice. "Hello, Mr. Henderson. I believe you were looking for me." It was him. The little bastard himself. He knew exactly times who I was. The sound of his voice, so calm and collected, sent a fresh wave of fury through me. "You?" I seethed. "Do you have any idea what you've just done?" "Sir, if you'll just calm down." "Calm down? You think I'm going to calm down?" I was practically screaming into the phone. "I gave you a number. I gave you a specific instruction. One goddamn instruction." And then he did it. With a sickeningly sweet, sarcastic tone, he said, "I do apologize for any inconvenience, sir. Please hold one moment while I look into this for you." And then the music started. Tinny, awful, looping hold music. He'd done it on purpose. He got me on the line just to put me on hold. For 20 minutes. I stood there, phone glued to my ear, listening to that infuriating little jingle, while my entire future was being torn to shreds in another part of town. 20 minutes while Amanda was probably throwing my clothes out the window. 20 minutes while Emily just stood there watching me, her own dreams crumbling around her. It was the longest 20 minutes of my life. It was torture. Pure, impotent rage. With nowhere to go. Finally, a different voice cut through the music. "Mr. Henderson, this is David, the floor manager. I understand you've had some distress." I was beyond fury now. I was just defeated. "Distress," I said, my voice hoarse. "Your employee didn't cause distress. He dropped a nuclear bomb on my life. I want him fired." The manager launched into his corporate script. He hid behind company policy and data protection. He talked about legal standpoints and offered a hollow, meaningless apology for the miscommunication. It was all just noise. He wasn't listening. He didn't care. To him, I was just an angry customer, a problem to be managed. "What are you going to do about him?" I demanded one last time. There was a sigh on the other end. "The agent has been reprimanded, Mr. Henderson. We've written him up for his spiteful handling of the call." A write-up. That's what it all amounted to. My whole planned future, the hope I'd clung to for years, my chance at happiness, it was worth a piece of paper in some kid's HR file. He gets a slap on the wrist and I'm left to sift through the rubble of everything I had. The call ended. The flat was silent. The sunlight that had seemed so hopeful earlier now just seemed harsh, illuminating all the dust in the empty rooms. The life Emily and I had planned in this space felt like a ghost before it had even begun. There was no quiet exit. There was no civilized separation. The next few weeks were a blur of screaming matches, lawyers' letters, and dividing up a life I had already left behind. It was ugly, public, and expensive. Everything I had worked so meticulously to avoid. Emily stood by me, but it wasn't the same. The joy and excitement were gone, replaced by stress and damage control. Our fresh start was tainted from day one born, not from hope, but from a disaster. And all because some kid in a call center, a total stranger, decided to be careless. He probably doesn't even remember my name. To him, it was just another call. To me, it was everything.
Story 3.
I'm the girl who cheated. I know that's how he tells the story, and he's not wrong. It's the one fact that burns everything else to the ground. But it's not the whole story. It's just the ending he saw. The story I lived was something different. Before I met him, my life was like one of those perfect houses in a magazine. Everything was expensive, clean, and completely empty. There was no life in it. The people, the men I dated, they were all the same. They looked at me and saw my father's last name, the balance in my trust fund. They'd talk about mergers and acquisitions over dinner while I just pushed food around my plate, feeling invisible. My whole world was about appearances. Silent dinners where the clinking of silverware was the loudest sound. Grand gestures that meant nothing because they were just transactions. Love was something you bought, you proved you won. Then I met him. He worked at a small graphic design company my dad's firm hired for a tiny, unimportant project. He was wearing a faded band t-shirt and had paint under his fingernails. He didn't look at my purse to see if it was designer. He looked at my face when I talked. He laughed at my stupid jokes. He asked me about my dreams, not my portfolio. For the first time, someone actually saw times me times Vanessa, not the walking bank account. Our worlds should have never mixed. His life was loud and messy and real. He had roommates and late rent payments and friends who would drop everything to help you move a couch. My life was scheduled, sterile, and lonely. When I introduced him to my parents, my father shook his hand and then immediately asked him about his 5-year plan. He just smiled and said, "To be happy." My father didn't get it. I did. It was everything I ever wanted. For 5 years, we built a life together. We moved into a small apartment that he filled with warmth and laughter. Our friends merged his rowdy, loyal group and my polished, polite ones. It felt like a miracle. I was living in this beautiful dream, a normal life. And it terrified me every single day. I felt like an imposter, a spoiled girl playing dress-up. I kept waiting for him to wake up and realize I wasn't good enough. That I was just pretending to be this down-to-earth person when deep down I was one of them, one of the hollow people I ran away from. The better things got, the louder the voice in my head became. He'd look at me with so much love, so much trust, and the voice would whisper times, "You're going to break it. You don't deserve this. You're going to ruin him." Asterisk. Loving him felt like a 5-year-long panic attack. I was so afraid of losing the one real thing in my life that my fears started to poison it. I'd pick fights over nothing just to see if he'd leave. He never did. He was patient and kind, which only made me feel worse. It made me feel like an even bigger fraud. The night it happened is a sick blur. I was out with some of my old friends from college. They were all talking about their lives, which sounded like checklists. Engagement, wedding house, in the suburbs, kids. It was the exact life I'd run from, but they made it sound so certain, so secure. All I could think about was the gnawing uncertainty inside me. All I could hear was that voice screaming, "Times, he's going to leave you. You're not what he thinks you are. It's only a matter of time." Asterisk. I drank too much champagne, trying to make the voice shut up. It didn't work. It just made me feel more disconnected, like I was watching my life from outside my own body. A guy started talking to me at the bar. He was a carbon copy of every man I'd ever dated before: slick hair, expensive watch, an easy, meaningless smile. He said all the empty things I was used to hearing. It wasn't exciting. It wasn't a temptation. It was familiar. It felt like slipping back into the role I knew how to play. The conversation meant nothing. He meant nothing. He was a ghost. But for a few minutes, talking to him felt like an escape from the crushing fear that I was about to lose everything I truly loved. It was a stupid, pathetic, and desperate act of self-destruction. It was me pressing the red button just to prove it was real. I was so convinced I was going to fail, so sure I was going to hurt him, that I did it myself first. It was the ultimate act of cowardice. I murdered my own happiness before anything else could. I woke up the next morning with a pit in my stomach so deep I thought I might actually be sick. The shame was a physical weight. He was in the kitchen making coffee, humming a song he liked. He smiled at me, and I felt like a monster. I swore to myself I would bury it. I would delete the memory, lock it away, and spend the rest of my life making it up to him being the person he deserved. It was a disgusting, selfish plan, but it was the only one I had. Then my phone buzzed on the nightstand. My heart stopped. It was a text from the guy from the bar. Something stupid. Last night was fun. We should do it again. My blood ran cold. It wasn't a memory anymore. It was evidence. It was proof of the crime I had committed against the only person I had ever truly loved. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely unlock the screen. I had to delete it. I had to erase it before it could ruin everything. I just had to hit delete, and this nightmare would be over. I fumbled with the phone, my thumb hovering over the trash icon. Just as I was about to press it, he walked into the bedroom holding a mug of coffee for me. He saw the look on my face. The pure, unfiltered panic. "You okay?" he asked, his smile fading. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I couldn't speak. I just stared at him, my heart pounding in my ears. He put the mug down and walked toward me, his brow furrowed with concern. He glanced down at my hands, at the phone gripped so tight my knuckles were white. Before I could hide it, before I could do anything, he gently took it from me. He didn't read it right away. For a second, he just held the phone, looking from it to me, his face full of confusion. He trusted me. The idea that there could be something bad on there probably didn't even cross his mind. He was just trying to figure out why I looked so terrified. Then his eyes dropped to the screen. I watched his face as he read the words. It was like watching a statue crack. First, nothing. He just went completely vacant, his expression wiped clean. All the warmth, all the love I was used to seeing there just vanished. The air in the room got cold and thin. He put the phone down on the nightstand, very gently, like it was a bomb. He didn't look at me. He just turned and walked out of the bedroom. That silence was the loudest sound I've ever heard. It was 1,000 times worse than screaming. I followed him into the living room, a pathetic weight escaping my lips. He was just standing by the window, looking out at the street, his back to me. "Who is he?" he asked. His voice was flat. "Dead." It meant nothing. I choked out the words, feeling like poison. It was a mistake. One stupid mistake. He finally turned around and the look on his face broke me. It wasn't anger yet. It was something much deeper. It was a kind of disbelief, like I had just told him the sky was green. He looked at me like he'd never seen me before. "A mistake," he repeated, his voice quiet. "You made a choice, Vanessa. This was a choice." And then the yelling started. It wasn't just him, it was me. I was sobbing, begging, trying to explain the mess in my head, the fear, the self-sabotage, the voice that told me I was going to ruin everything. But it all just sounded like excuses. Pathetic, selfish excuses. He wasn't hearing my reasons. He was just hearing the truth. I had shattered his trust. I had taken the one pure good thing in my life and destroyed it for no reason at all. Our fight wasn't a performance for the neighbors, though I'm sure they heard every word. It was the sound of my soul literally tearing itself in two. The good part that loved him and the broken part that had just killed him. He said it was over. He said he couldn't even look at me. Then he walked back into the bedroom, packed a bag, and left. I collapsed on the floor, crying so hard I couldn't breathe. I thought that was the worst it could get. I was wrong. The next day I went to my parents' house, just desperate for somewhere to go. When I came back to the apartment that evening, it was half empty. His clothes were gone. His books were gone. The stupid, ugly painting he loved was gone from the wall. He had taken his entire life out of ours while I wasn't there. He had erased himself. That's when I made my choice. He chose to leave and I chose to fight. In the world I grew up in, you don't just let things go, you fix them. You prove your worth. If something is broken, you throw money and effort at it until it's whole again. I thought his silence was a test. He was hurting and he needed to see how much I loved him. He needed proof. So I started sending the gifts. First it was flowers to his office. A huge bouquet with a card that just said, "I'm sorry. I love you." Then I sent a first edition copy of his favorite book to his new place. I had to get the address from one of his friends. I wrote letters, pages and pages of them, pouring out everything I couldn't say during our fight. I explained the fear, my feelings of not being good enough, how my love for him was so big it scared me into doing the dumbest thing in the world. He never responded. The silence continued. So I tried harder. I thought he needs to times me. He needs to know I won't just disappear, that I won't give up. I knew his routine. I knew which coffee shop he went to in the morning, which bar he and his friends went to on Fridays. I'd go with my friends and we'd just happen to be there. I'd try to catch his eye just to give him a small, sad smile to show him I was still here, still fighting for us. He would just turn and walk away. I wasn't stalking him. In my messed up head, I was making a grand gesture. I was trying to scream, "I love you," across the canyon of silence he had built between us. I asked my friends to talk to him, to tell him how devastated I was, to tell him that he was my whole world. They did, but it only made things worse. He told them to tell me to stop. But I couldn't. Giving up felt like admitting that he was right, that I didn't love him enough. Persistence was how I had been taught to show devotion. You don't take no for an answer. You wear them down with the sheer force of your love. I see now how crazy that sounds, but at the time it was the only logic I understood. I thought his anger was a wall I just had to be strong enough to break down. The final blow didn't come from him. It came from my mother. She called me one afternoon. Her tone was serious, the same one she used when a business deal went south. "Vanessa," she said, no warmth in her voice. "I spoke with his mother. You need to stop." My blood ran cold. "What? Why?" "You're hurting him," she said, and the words hit me like a physical slap. "This isn't helping. You're scaring him. All these things you're doing. The letters, the showing up. It's not love. It's harassment. You have to leave him alone. It's over." Hearing it from her, the woman who taught me that the solution to any problem was to be relentless, to take what you want, to never show weakness, it broke through all my delusions. She was the one who always told me to fight, and now she was telling me to surrender. I hung up the phone and just sat there in silence. And for the first time I saw myself through his eyes. The gifts weren't romantic. They were intrusions. The letters weren't apologies. They were demands for attention. My presence wasn't a reminder of my love. It was a threat. My grand gestures weren't a testament to my devotion. They were deeply, profoundly selfish. I wasn't the heartbroken girl fighting for the love of her life. I was the monster under his bed. I was the villain in his story. I finally understood. The silence he wanted wasn't a test for me to pass. It was his new reality. A reality he needed to build to protect himself from me. And I wasn't in it. I was never going to be in it again.
Story 4.
I know I look like the bad guy here. I get it. My boyfriend finally starts getting better after years of being horribly sick. And what do? I ask for an open relationship. It sounds like the most selfish, cruel thing a person could do, and I've seen the look in his eyes every day for the past month that tells me he thinks so too. But there's so much more to it than that. When I met Mark, he was incredible. He was funny, smart, and so ridiculously confident. I was 23, insecure, and felt like I was just faking my way through adulthood. He saw something in me, and for that I would have done anything for him. I put him on a pedestal. A few months into our relationship, we were lying in bed, and he casually said, "What would you think about an open relationship just for fun, like a little sexcapade?" My heart just dropped. To him, it was a fun idea. To me, it was a confirmation of my deepest fear that I wasn't enough for this amazing person. I said no, absolutely not, and he dropped it immediately and apologized. But I never forgot it. I buried it deep down, but it was always there, the feeling that I was replaceable. Then about a year later, he got sick. It wasn't a cold or something that gets better. It was a chronic, debilitating illness that came out of nowhere and stole the man I fell in love with. The confident, athletic guy was gone, replaced by someone in constant pain who couldn't work, couldn't exercise, and fell into a deep, dark depression. My life stopped. My entire world shrank to the size of our tiny one-bedroom apartment. For the next 6 years, my 20s, I was his caretaker. That was my identity. My job was just the thing I did between making sure he took his meds, getting him to doctor's appointments, and holding him when the pain or the hopelessness was too much. My friends would invite me out, but I'd always say no. How could I go have fun when he was miserable at home? Eventually they stopped asking. My life was Mark. My purpose was keeping him afloat. I did it because I loved him and I would do it again. But in the process of saving him, I completely disappeared. I didn't have hobbies. I didn't have ambitions. I was just the sick guy's girlfriend. Then a few months ago, two things happened at once. First, I got a new job. It's in a high-pressure field and it's incredibly demanding. For the first time, I was terrified, but in a good way. And then a weird thing happened. I was good at it. Really good. My boss praised my work. Clients asked for me by name. I was leading projects and making decisions. I was building this person I never knew existed, a confident woman who was smart and capable all on her own. I started earning respect, and more importantly, I started respecting myself. At the exact same time, Mark started getting better. It was slow at first, a good day here and there, then a good week. He started physical therapy. He started talking to his old friends again. The light came back into his eyes. He wanted to pick up where we left off to get his old life back. He started talking about getting married, about the future, about how we had finally made it through the storm. He wanted his old girlfriend back. The problem was, she wasn't there anymore. The thought of snapping back into that old role where my happiness was just a reflection of his felt suffocating. It felt like a cage. I was just starting to discover who I was, and I was terrified of losing her again. One day at work, a coworker was talking about her relationship troubles, and she mentioned she and her boyfriend were trying polyamory. She wasn't talking about it in a sleazy way. She was talking about communication and autonomy. And that word autonomy hit me like a ton of bricks. That's what I was craving. It wasn't about other men. I honestly have zero interest in dating. It was about having a life that was my own, separate from his. So I tried to talk to him. It was the most awkward, painful conversation of my life. I tried to explain that I felt like I'd lost myself for years, and that I needed space to figure out who I am now. I said I wasn't sure if I was in the right headspace for the kind of serious, all-in commitment he wanted now that he was better. I clumsily used the word polyamory as an example of people having relationships with more personal freedom, and I immediately knew it was a mistake. I even said maybe I needed to be single for a while. He just stared at me, completely blindsided. All he heard was, "Now that you're not a burden anymore, I want to go sleep with other people." It crushed him. He sees it as the ultimate betrayal. He thinks my new job has given me some big ego and I'm just on a power trip. He doesn't get that this is the first time in my adult life I've had any ego at all. Now we're living in a nightmare. We can't afford to move out, so we're trapped in this tiny apartment, suffocating in the tension. He keeps trying to fix it by offering compromises that totally miss the point. He suggested a threesome, as if that would solve anything. Then he said maybe I could be with other girls, but not guys. He's treating this like a sexual problem, an itch I need to scratch. He doesn't understand that this is a crisis about my entire identity. I look at him and I see the man I love, my best friend, and I see how much I'm hurting him. It makes me feel like a monster. But going back to the way things were feels like it would kill the person I'm just starting to become. Last night he came home with a huge smile on his face, the first real one I'd seen in weeks. He was holding 2 tickets. "I booked us a weekend away," he said, his voice full of hope. "A little cabin upstate. No phones, no work, just us. Like the old days." We can finally reconnect and fix this." I felt the blood drain from my face. I nodded and forced a smile, telling him it sounded wonderful. He hugged me, holding me tight, and whispered, "I'm not going to lose you." He thinks this trip is going to be a new beginning for us. And all I can think is that it's going to be the end. The drive upstate was the quietest 3 hours of my life. Mark had made a playlist of all our old songs, the ones from when we first started dating, and he kept glancing over at me, smiling, trying to catch my eye. I just stared out the window at the passing trees, my stomach in knots. He was trying so hard to recreate a past that I was desperately trying to escape. Every song felt like another bar on the cage he was unknowingly building around me. The cabin was beautiful, exactly the kind of rustic, cozy place we would have loved years ago. There was a fireplace, a big comfy bed, and a porch that overlooked a quiet lake. It was meant to be romantic, but to me it felt like a stage set for a final, terrible scene. That first night he made dinner. He was so proud, telling me how his physical therapy was paying off. How he finally had the stamina to stand and cook a full meal again. I watched him, this man I had nursed and supported for years, finally looking healthy and happy. And all I felt was a profound, soul-crushing guilt. He opened a bottle of wine and sat next to me on the couch in front of the fire. "See," he said softly, taking my hand. "This is all we need. Just us. We made it through hell, babe. We can make it through anything." And that was it. That was the moment I knew I couldn't pretend anymore. I pulled my hand away. "Mark," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "We need to talk. For real this time." His smile faded. I thought that's what we were doing. Reconnecting. "No," I said, tears starting to well up in my eyes. "You're trying to reconnect with someone who isn't here anymore. The girl you fell in love with. I don't think she exists." He looked so confused, so hurt. "What are you talking about? You're right here." I finally let it all out. The years of feeling invisible, of my entire world being defined by his sickness. I told him how my new job wasn't about ego, but about discovering a part of myself I never knew I had, a competent, strong part that had nothing to do with being his girlfriend. "This isn't about sex or polyamory or any of that," I pleaded, hoping he would finally hear me. "I don't want to date anyone else. I want to date times myself, asterisk. For 6 years there was no me. It was only us, and even then it was mostly about keeping you alive. I lost myself in that, Mark. And I'm terrified of losing myself again right when I'm starting to find her." He was quiet for a long time, just staring into the fire. When he finally spoke, his voice was cold. "So that's it? I was a burden, a project, and now that I'm better, you're bored, you're ready to trade up?" "No, that's not it at all." "Isn't it?" he shot back, his voice rising. "I get my life back and you immediately want out. You want autonomy. What the hell do you think I've wanted for the past 6 years while you were my caretaker? I was a prisoner in my own body. I know that. This isn't a competition of who had it worse. It feels like it is. It feels like you're punishing me for getting better." He stood up and started pacing. "You know, I remember when we first met. You were so unsure of yourself. I saw how amazing you were, and I spent years telling you, trying to get you to see it. And now that you finally do, you use that confidence to tell me you don't want me anymore. It's a slap in the face. The thing I had buried for years came bubbling to the surface. You want to talk about the beginning, I said, my voice shaking with a new kind of anger. A few months in, you asked me if I wanted an open relationship. A sexcapade. You thought it would be fun. To me, it was you telling me I wasn't enough on my own. I spent our entire relationship feeling like I had to earn my spot, prove that I was enough. And then you got sick and my purpose became proving I was loyal enough. I'm done proving myself, Mark. I need to be enough for times me times now. He stared at me, dumbfounded. You're bringing that up now, a stupid comment I made when I was 28. You're using that as an excuse to destroy us. It's not an excuse, I was sobbing now. It's the foundation. The foundation was that you were the sun and I was just lucky to be in your orbit. I can't live like that anymore. I think we have to break up. The words hung in the air, awful and final. The rest of the weekend was a blur of silence and pain. We packed up the next morning and drove home without speaking a single word. Living together since then has been a special kind of hell. The one-bedroom apartment that once felt like our sanctuary, our bunker against the world, now feels like a prison cell we share. I move my stuff onto the couch. We communicate through text messages even when we're in the same room. I'm going to use the kitchen, or I need to take a shower. We are ghosts haunting the life we built together. I see him sometimes sitting on the edge of the bed we used to share, just staring at the wall. I can feel the weight of his sadness, and it makes me feel like the most monstrous person on the planet. Our two pets are the only bridge between us. He'll feed the cat, I'll walk the dog, and for a brief moment we'll have a civil exchange about their needs. It's a sad, pathetic imitation of the partnership we used to have. I'm saving every penny I can. I look at apartment listings late at night when I know he's asleep. The thought of leaving feels both liberating and terrifying. This man is still my best friend. He's the person who knows me better than anyone. But he fell in love with a version of me that was defined by him. And I've fallen in love with a version of myself that needs to be defined by me. His recovery was a miracle, but it was a miracle that pushed us apart. He needed to get his old life back, and I needed to build a new one. I saved his life, and in a way he saved mine by showing me I was worthy of love all those years ago. The tragedy is that we couldn't figure out how to save ourselves and stay together. I don't know what the future holds, but I know I can't go back into the shadow. Even if it means walking forward completely, utterly alone.
Story 5.
I'm sure he's told you his side of the story. I'm the villain, the cheater who broke our family. And he's not wrong about the facts. I did cheat. I lied. But the facts are just bones, and he never tells you about the skin, about the why. He never tells you how I got there. My whole life has been about being afraid of being left, and in the end, he was the one who abandoned me, just in a much slower, quieter way than I ever expected. My parents died when I was a toddler. I don't remember them. I was given to my uncle, and he was fine, but I always knew I was a guest. I learned a lesson very early. You are not guaranteed a place in this world. Love can disappear. Safety can be taken away. That fear has followed me my whole life, this little ghost that sits on my shoulder whispering that I'm one wrong move away from being all alone again. When I met him, it felt like the ghost finally went quiet. He was my manager, older than me, so sure of himself. He seemed like the safest place on earth. He had a life, a daughter, a plan. He was an anchor, and I felt like I had been drifting in the ocean my entire life. I developed a huge crush. I'd go see him when he was bartending on the side, and every time I laughed at one of his jokes, it felt like I was trying on a new life, one where I belonged somewhere. One night, I just went for it. I kissed him. I felt like I had to do something big to make him see me, to choose me. And he did. He kissed me back, and it felt like I could finally breathe. A few weeks later, he told me I should quit my job so we could be together without it being a problem at work. To me, that was the ultimate proof. He was picking me. I didn't even think twice. I put in my notice the next day. I had my anchor. A few months later, the anchor showed me how easily it could be pulled up. We had a stupid fight, something about me staying out too late with my friends. It was nothing. But when I got home, all of my things, every shirt, every book, every picture, were packed into suitcases on the doorstep. He was standing in the doorway looking down at me like a judge. He told me that if I was going to be with him, I had to commit. I had to take care of him and his daughter. It wasn't a question. It was an ultimatum. All I could see was my entire childhood flashing in front of me. The feeling of being unwanted, of having nowhere to go. I didn't choose to walk back into that apartment. I was cornered. I walked back in because I was terrified of being alone again. I learned my lesson that night. His love came with rules, and my home depended on me following them perfectly. The first few years were rough. He had a temper and he drank too much. He got 2 DUIs. He cheated on me more than once. I found out, and each time it felt like the floor was dropping out from under me. I was the one who had to hold everything together. I finally told him that if he got in trouble with drinking again, I would leave. I wasn't trying to threaten him, I was just desperate. I had to save him because if his life fell apart, so did mine. To his credit, he stopped. He got sober and he stopped seeing other women. I was so proud of him. But he replaced the bottle with work, and he traded the other women for complete emotional distance from me. For years he was a ghost. He left for work before I woke up and came home after I was asleep. He was building his business, and I supported him. But he wasn't my partner anymore. He was just a provider. He gave me a beautiful house, a nice car, and a life that looked perfect from the outside. But inside that beautiful house, I was so crushingly lonely. We barely talked. We had sex maybe a few times a year, and even then it felt like a chore he was checking off a list. I was starving for a connection, for someone to just see me, to ask me how my day was, to hold my hand. It wasn't even about sex. It was about feeling like I existed. I would cry in the shower so he wouldn't hear me, just asking myself, is this it? Is this my life? The loneliness started to feel like a disease. My friends were my only lifeline. And then one of them became something more. He's a friend we've both known for 20 years. It started so small. He just noticed I was sad. He'd ask if I was okay. He listened when I talked. One day he held my hand, and it was like I could feel color in the world again after years of seeing in black and white. It wasn't a plan. I never woke up and thought I'm going to have an affair. It was a slow drift toward the only warmth I could find. It turned into an emotional affair. We texted all the time. He made me feel seen and funny and desirable. I know the sexting and the pictures were a mistake, a huge one. But at the time they were proof that I wasn't invisible. Proof that someone in the world actually wanted me. I was so starved for that feeling I just couldn't stop. I knew my marriage was over. It had been over for years. My plan was to finish my classes, get my professional license, and then leave. I needed to have my own lifeboat before I jumped off the ship he was captaining. But I never got the chance to leave on my own terms. He found the letters. He didn't just find them. He went looking. He searched my computer, dug through my private files until he found what he was looking for. He confronted me and the world just exploded. Through our therapist, he found out who it was, and I was terrified. Not for me, but for my friend. I know my husband's history, the anger he has deep inside him. I was so afraid of what he would do. After that, our house became a prison. He said he wanted to fix things, but it didn't feel like fixing. It felt like he was conquering me all over again. The sex came back, but it was frantic and desperate. It wasn't about us connecting. It was about him marking his territory. He wanted my phone, password, my email password, everything. He wasn't trying to rebuild trust. He was trying to build a surveillance system. I felt like I was suffocating, walking on eggshells every second of the day. He watched my every move. I smiled when I was supposed to smile. I said I was sorry 1,000 times. And I played the part of the wife who was desperate to be forgiven. But all I felt was trapped and more alone than ever. So I kept lying. I know how that sounds. It sounds like I'm a terrible person who didn't care who was just playing him. But it wasn't like that. I'd agreed to stop all contact, and I meant it when I said it. But in the days that followed, nothing changed. The surveillance didn't stop. The feeling of being watched, of being on probation, was constant. He wasn't trying to understand why I was so unhappy. He was just trying to make sure I couldn't step out of line again. His love didn't feel like a comfort, it felt like a cage. The other man, he was my only connection to the outside world. He was the one person who knew the truth of how lonely I was. Cutting him off completely felt like cutting off my own oxygen. It was a lifeline I was terrified to let go of because I didn't trust that my husband wouldn't just pull the rug out from under me again. The first time we had a real fight, he packed my bags. What was stopping him from doing it again? So I kept talking to him. Just messages on Snapchat. Stupid, I know. But they were my secret proof that if my whole world fell apart, someone would still know I existed. It wasn't about choosing him over my husband. It was about pure childish terror of being left with nothing and no one. A few weeks after the discovery, my husband suggested we go away for a night. Get a hotel, try to connect. I agreed. I wanted to try. I really, really did. I was exhausted from the tension from performing the role of the good, sorry wife. I thought maybe, just maybe, if we could get out of that house, we could find a piece of what we used to have. The night was fine. It was awkward. We made small talk. We had sex, and it felt like we were both just going through the motions, trying to prove something. I remember lying in the hotel bed later, staring at the ceiling and just feeling this profound emptiness. I felt like I was failing a test I didn't even have the answers to. I eventually fell asleep, just worn out from the effort of it all. When I woke up the next morning, the other side of the bed was empty. His pillow was cold. My first thought was that he'd gone to get coffee. Then I saw my phone on the nightstand next to me. He had left it there, screen lit up. On it was a screenshot of the Snapchat messages between me and the other man. That's it. No note. No angry words scrawled on the hotel stationery. No yelling. He hadn't woken me up to confront me. To fight. To scream. He had waited until I was asleep, gone through my phone, found the proof he was looking for, and left. He just disappeared. I just sat there on the edge of the bed staring at that screenshot. My whole body went numb. It was the doorstep all over again. The ultimate silent rejection. He didn't stay to fight for us. He didn't want to hear my reasons. He found my failure, my imperfection, and he executed the sentence. He abandoned me. The one thing I had spent my entire life being afraid of, he did it in the quietest, coldest way possible. I had to call a taxi to take me home from the hotel, sitting in the back seat like a ghost, my whole life packed into an overnight bag next to me. The aftermath has been a blur of lawyers and dividing up our lives. He tells everyone, our friends, our family, that I blew up our marriage with my affair. He's the victim, the hard-working husband who was betrayed by his unfaithful wife. And on paper, he's right. The facts support his story. He gets all the sympathy. I'm the monster who couldn't keep her legs closed. But they don't see the years of loneliness. They don't see the man who became a roommate instead of a partner. They don't know about the nights I cried myself to sleep because the person lying next to me felt 1,000,000 miles away. They don't know that the affair wasn't the thing that broke our marriage. It was just the loud noise that happened after years of it silently falling apart. It was a symptom of the disease, not the disease itself. I'm not trying to say I'm innocent. I messed up. I lied. I hurt him and I hurt our family, and I will have to live with that for the rest of my life. I hate the person I became in those last couple of years, but I also know that I was drowning. I was a person starving for a single scrap of emotional connection, and I took it from the wrong place because my own home had become a desert. He thinks this story is about my betrayal. He's built his whole new life on the foundation of that narrative. But it's not. This story is about a man who only knew how to own things, not how to love them. He owned a house, a business, and a wife. And when the wife malfunctioned, he got rid of her. From that first night he put my bags on the doorstep, he taught me that his love was conditional. For 20 years I tried to meet those conditions. I performed, I supported, I made myself smaller to fit into the life he was building. And in the end, the moment I failed, he was gone. My greatest fear wasn't cheating or being caught. My greatest fear was being put back on that doorstep, being found unworthy. And that's exactly where he left me. He just used a hotel room this time.
Story 6.
My husband probably thinks our story started the day he found me with another man. But it started years before that in a glass-walled conference room with a boss who kept touching my lower back. Or maybe it started even earlier, when my college professor told me I had a good face for television after I presented a paper on geopolitical theory. For a long time, my life has been a series of men looking at my face and body, but never ever looking at my mind. Don't get me wrong, I love my husband. I know that sounds like a lie right now, but it's the truest thing in all of this mess. He is a good man. He's kind and solid, and when he holds my hand, I feel safe. He comes from a world where things are simple. You work hard, you love your family, you fix what's broken. I fell in love with that simplicity. It felt like an anchor in the storm of my own life. But after a while, an anchor just feels like something holding you down. My career has been a battlefield. At my first big job, my manager would accidentally brush against me in the hallway. He'd make comments about my clothes. I worked twice as hard as any of the men on my team, but in every performance review, he'd praise my positive attitude and ability to brighten up a room. I quit when he cornered me after a client dinner and tried to kiss me. My husband was furious. He held me while I cried and said all the right things, that the guy was a creep, that I was too good for them. But he didn't understand the real poison. The problem wasn't just the harassment. It was that my brain, the thing I was most proud of, was completely invisible to them. I found a new job. Better company, better title, and for a while it was okay. But the feeling slowly crept back in. The condescending smiles from older male colleagues when I spoke up in a meeting. Being asked to take notes because my handwriting was neater. I was fighting every single day just to be taken seriously, to be seen as a strategist and not an ornament. I'd come home exhausted, my mind buzzing with ideas and frustrations, and my husband would be there, bless his heart, wanting to talk about his day, laying tile, or our plans to go kayaking on the weekend. And I'd just say my day was fine, because how do you explain that you're dying of thirst to a man who has never been thirsty a day in his life? Then the big project landed on my desk. And so did he. My coworker. Let's call him Alex. Alex wasn't handsome like my husband. He was thin and wired, always looked like he'd been up for 2 days drinking coffee, which he usually had. But when I talked, he listened. Not just politely waiting for his turn to speak, but really listening. He would argue with me, tear my ideas apart, and force me to defend them. It was brutal and exhilarating. For the first time maybe ever, a man looked at me and saw an equal, an opponent, an ally. We started working late. Our debates over market strategy were electric. It wasn't about flirting, it was about two minds clashing and creating something new. The attraction grew out of that. It wasn't about sex. It was about being seen. One night we had a huge breakthrough and went out for a drink to celebrate. We talked for hours and the conversation shifted from work to everything else. And then he kissed me. It was clumsy and stupid, and I immediately pulled away and ran out of the bar. I went home feeling sick. My husband was asleep, snoring softly, and I just stared at him, my heart pounding with guilt. I knew I had to end it before it even began. It was a mistake. The next day I went to Alex's hotel to tell him just that. But when he opened the door, he had that same look on his face, that look of pure, unadulterated respect. And I just fell apart. That's when the affair started. It lasted for 3 weeks. It was a frantic, desperate, ugly thing. The sex was almost an afterthought, a physical symptom of the intellectual fever we were both running. I felt powerful. I felt brilliant. I felt alive. And I hated myself for it. I was so lost I even made an anonymous post on Reddit, just typing into the void, asking strangers what was wrong with me, why I was doing this when I had a good man at home. I wanted to stop. I just didn't know how. Then came our anniversary, our 10th. I was in my office with Alex, trying to solve one last crisis before I could leave to meet my husband for dinner. I was stressed, and he came up behind me and started rubbing the tension out of my shoulders, whispering some idea about the project into my ear. It wasn't sexual, not really. It was just Us. The way we worked. I laughed at something he said, a moment of relief. And that's when the door opened. It was my husband. He was holding the most beautiful bouquet of flowers I'd ever seen. His face, which was usually so open and happy, was just blank. Destroyed. He didn't shout. He didn't cry. He just walked over to my desk, slammed the flowers down so hard a vase on the credenza jumped, and said, "Happy anniversary." Then he turned and walked out. The door clicked shut behind him, and the silence in the room was louder than any scream. The fight that night was the worst night of my life. He kept asking why, and I didn't have an answer that would make any sense to him. How could I explain this gaping hole inside me without shattering the image he had of us, of me? So I just cried and said, "I don't know." He asked if I loved him. I said yes, because I do. He asked how many times. I told him the truth. Every word felt like a stone I was handing him to throw at me. The next morning the house was silent. He'd slept on the couch. I found him in the kitchen staring at his phone. He looked up at me and his eyes were cold, like I was a stranger he'd found in his house. "I have one more question," he said, his voice flat. "This guy at work, did he by any chance challenge you intellectually?" My blood ran cold. He had found it. He had found my anonymous scream into the internet, and he was holding it like a knife. The one place I had been completely brutally honest, and he had read it all. The confusion, the self-hatred, the desperate need for validation. He'd seen the ugliest, weakest parts of my soul. "It's not like that," I whispered, but the words were ash in my mouth. How do you explain an identity crisis to a man who has never once questioned who he is? "Isn't it?" he shot back, his voice finally cracking the coldness, giving way to a raw, ragged pain. "It's right there in black and white. You wanted someone to challenge you." "What am I, Megan?" "A simpleton you come home to after you're done playing with the grown-ups. Am I just the guy who fixes the damn sink and rubs your feet? Is that all I've been for 10 years? "No, God, no," I cried, stepping towards him, but he flinched back like I was on fire. "It was never about you being dumb. You're the smartest person I know about things that matter about real life. This was about my work. It's a snake pit. They look at me and they see a skirt. Alex, he saw my brain. That's all it was at first." He just laughed, a horrible, bitter sound. "That's all it was. You think I'm an idiot. I saw him, Megan. With his hands on you. Don't you dare tell me this was some book club that got out of hand. You fucked him." The word hit me like a slap. He'd never spoken to me like that. Not once in our entire lives together. The dam broke. I was sobbing, trying to force the words out. I know, and I hate myself for it, but it wasn't about love or even sex, not really. It was about feeling powerful for 1 second in a world that makes me feel so stupid and small all day long. I was drowning, and it felt like a life raft. "I was your life raft," he finally roared, and the force of it pushed me back. "For 10 years, who held you when you came home crying from those shitty jobs? Who told you that you were brilliant and that they were morons? Who was there? Me, I was here. And you threw it all away for some guy who could talk to you about what market shares and quarterly reports. Is that what our marriage was worth?" He was right. He had been there. He had always been my safe harbor. And in my desperate search for a different kind of validation, I had set fire to the one place I was ever truly safe. There was nothing I could say. He saw the affair as a verdict on him, and maybe it was. Maybe my needing something he couldn't give me was a flaw in our marriage from the very start. He told me to pack a bag and go to my parents' house. He said he couldn't even look at me. The silence as I threw clothes into a suitcase was the loudest sound I'd ever heard. I'd been at my parents' house for 2 days, walking around like a ghost when my mom sat me down. She told me she had gone to see him. I felt a surge of rage. How could she interfere? "He's a good man, Megan," she said, her voice quiet. "He's broken. He just kept saying he didn't understand, that he thought you were happy." "What did you tell him?" I asked, my voice shaking. "I told him about Robert." Robert. The man she dated before my father. The mechanic with the kind eyes and the easy laugh. The man she left for my dad, a successful lawyer with a country club membership. I had heard his name maybe twice in my entire life. She told me how she had convinced herself it was the right thing to do, the smart thing. She chose status and security. And she told my husband that not a month has gone by in 40 years that she hasn't wondered what her life would have been if she'd stayed with the man she truly loved, the man who made her feel simple and happy. "Why would you tell him that?" I whispered, horrified. "You made it sound like I was going to leave him." "No," she said, looking me straight in the eye. "I told him that so he would understand that sometimes people with too much ambition get lost. We make terrible life-ruining mistakes because we're chasing something we think we need, and we trample the things we actually love. I told him that I saw my own stupid, prideful mistake in you, and that he shouldn't let you make it permanent." Her words didn't fix anything, but they shifted something inside me. For weeks I had been telling a story about my own intellectual hunger, my professional frustrations. My mother in one conversation had reframed it as a simple, tragic story of love and regret. She didn't excuse what I did, she just explained it in a language he could understand. "It's been a month now. We're talking. Not like we used to. The calls are stiff and painful. We're in therapy both separately and together. Our couples therapist is a no-nonsense woman who says things like, 'Validation is an internal job.' I hate it when she says that, mostly because I know she's right. I used Alex to feel powerful, and I used my husband's simple goodness as an excuse. The affair wasn't a symptom of my identity crisis. The affair times was times the crisis. He's trying. I can see him trying. He asked me to explain one of my projects to him the other day. He listened, really listened, and asked questions. They weren't the challenging, incisive questions Alex would have asked, but they were his questions. He was trying to see my world. It was the most loving thing he has ever done for me, and it broke my heart all over again. I don't know if we'll make it. The trust is shattered, maybe forever. He looks at me sometimes, and I can see him replaying that scene in my office. I look at him and see the man whose heart I broke because I was too weak and too selfish to fix myself. I blew up our life looking for a spark, and now all I do is sit in the dark and miss the steady, simple warmth of the home I burned down. I love him. I just don't know if that's enough anymore.
Story 7.
I know how this looks. I know what you've heard, what he's probably told everyone. I'm the villain, the cheating wife who threw away a perfectly good marriage for a fling. I get it. From the outside, that's what it is. He was a good man, a great father, and I broke his heart. But stories are never that simple, are they? His version leaves out the years of silence, the slow, crushing weight of being married to a man who shared my house but not my life. I loved my husband once. I really did. When we were in our 20s, he was everything. He was strong and dependable, the kind of guy who could fix anything and made you feel safe. He was a rock. But the thing about rocks is, they don't change. They don't grow. And I was growing so fast I felt like I was going to burst out of my own skin. I climbed the ladder at my job, I read books, I followed the news, I wanted to talk about politics and art and new business ideas. I'd come home from a 12-hour day, my mind buzzing, and I'd try to tell him about a project I was leading or an interesting article I'd read. He'd just nod, eyes glued to the TV, and say, "That's nice, honey." Then he'd ask what was for dinner. It was like shouting into a void. I begged him to find a passion, to get a career beyond his personal training gigs, to come out with my friends instead of just wanting to hang out with his gym buddies. He was happy. That was the most infuriating part. He was perfectly content with his routine gym, kids, TV, sleep. His contentment felt like a jail sentence for me. I felt so incredibly, profoundly alone, especially at night, lying next to this warm body that felt a million miles away. So I started to build my own world. I threw myself into my fitness. He probably told you I was doing it to get attention, to look good for someone else. The truth is, it was the one thing I could control. My body. I could make it stronger, push it to its limits, and feel powerful for an hour a day when the rest of my life felt so powerless. The new clothes, the makeup, that was armor. It was me trying to look on the outside like the successful, confident woman I was at work instead of the tired, invisible wife I was at home. My phone became my secret garden. It was the only place I could be myself. I'd text my friends, read articles he'd never understand, and just escape. That's why I guarded it so fiercely. It wasn't about hiding a man. It was about protecting the last piece of me that was still mine. And the intimacy. It just died. It wasn't a conscious decision to reject him. How can you be physically close to someone you can't even have a real conversation with? Lying there, letting him touch me felt like the biggest lie of all. It was easier to just say I was tired. Every no was a symptom of a deeper sickness. I was starving for connection, for a single person to see me, the real me, and not just the role I was playing. Then I found one, my coworker Mark. And no, it didn't start the way you think. It wasn't lust or a cheap thrill. It started with a conversation. We were working on a huge project together, spending late nights at the office. One night I made a dry, sarcastic joke, the kind my husband would never get. Mark didn't just laugh. He came right back with a better one. It was like a light turned on in a dark room. He challenged my ideas. He debated with me. He saw me as a smart, capable person, not just a wife and a mom. He was in a dead marriage, too. We started talking, just venting to each other. Soon we were texting. At first it was about work, then it was about our lives, our frustrations, our dreams. Those late-night texts became my lifeline. I'd lie in bed next to my sleeping husband, the blue light of the screen on my face, finally feeling seen. I could tell Mark things I hadn't said out loud to anyone. For the first time in a decade, I wasn't just someone's wife. I was myself. The work trip was coming up. It was a conference at a tropical resort, a week of intense presentations and networking. Mark and I were both leading a major session. I was nervous and excited. My husband just grunted when I told him about it. He asked if the hotel had a good gym. That was it. No good luck, no I'll miss you, just the gym. That trip changed everything. During the day we were professionals, totally focused. But at night, after the dinners and forced socializing, we'd find a quiet spot by the beach and just talk for hours. We talked about the people we used to be and the people we wanted to become. Under the stars, with the sound of the ocean in the background, all the walls came down. The line between friends and something more just disappeared. It happened. We crossed it. And it didn't feel like a sordid, cheap affair. It felt like coming home. It was a betrayal of my marriage vows, I know that. But it felt like an affirmation of myself, of the woman I had become, who needed more than a quiet life, and a husband who didn't get her. When I got home, the silence in my house was louder than ever. The texting with Mark didn't stop. It got more intense. It was the only thing keeping me sane. A few weeks later, I was lying in bed typing out a long message to him. My husband was next to me, breathing deeply. I thought he was fast asleep. He always was by this time. The house was dark and quiet, the only light coming from my screen. I was smiling at something Mark wrote, feeling that familiar spark of connection. Suddenly, the mattress shifted. Before I could even register what was happening, his arms snaked around me. It wasn't a hug. It was heavy, deliberate. "What are you smiling at?" he asked, his voice low and strange, not sleepy at all. My heart hammered against my ribs. I tried to angle the phone away, my thumb moving to lock the screen. "Nothing," I said, trying to keep my voice light. "Just a funny video." He didn't answer. He just tightened his grip. His other hand came up not to caress my face, but to grab for my wrist, the one holding the phone. I realized with a jolt of pure ice in my veins that he hadn't been sleeping at all. He had been waiting. "It's nothing, just leave it," I said, my voice shaking as I tried to pull my wrist free. It was useless. He's a big guy, a professionally trained martial artist, and when he decided he wanted something, that was it. What happened next wasn't a fight. A fight implies two sides have a chance. This was just him taking what he wanted. He rolled on top of me, pinning me to the mattress with his weight. He started laughing, but it was a horrible, ugly sound. It wasn't a real laugh. It was for show a performance of being the playful husband, while his eyes were cold and furious. He wrestled the phone from my hand like he was taking a toy from a child. I felt so small, so completely powerless. He held it just out of my reach, my own phone, my private world used as a tool to humiliate me. "Let's see what's so funny," he said, that fake laugh gone now. He unlocked it with my face and started scrolling. The room was dead silent except for the sound of his thumb swiping across the screen. I just lay there frozen, watching his expression shift from suspicion to a kind of dark certainty. I saw his eyes pause, and I knew exactly what he was reading. The text from the trip, the late-night confessions, then his face went hard as granite. I knew he'd found the one where I'd called him the animal. It was a cruel, stupid thing to type, born from a moment of pure frustration, but seeing it through his eyes, I felt sick. He didn't yell. He didn't scream. He did something much worse. He looked at me, then at the phone, and pressed Mark's name. He put it on speaker. My blood ran cold. The phone rang once, twice. Then Mark's sleepy voice came through the speaker. "Hey, you." My husband's voice was unnaturally calm. "Is this Mark?" There was a long pause. "Who is this?" "This is her husband," he said, his eyes locked on mine. "I think you and I need to have a little chat about what you've been doing with my wife." I couldn't breathe. I just listened in horror as Mark stammered, denied everything, and then fell silent as my husband read one of our texts out loud. It was over in less than a minute. Mark hung up. My husband slowly lowered the phone and just looked at me. The silence was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. "So," he said, his voice flat. "Talk." I tried to deny it. I tried to lie. I said we were just friends, that he was just helping me with work stress. I admitted it was an emotional affair, that I'd crossed a line with what I said, but that's all it was. I was talking fast, trying to build a wall of words to protect myself, but he just sat there listening completely unmoved. I realized now he was probably recording me. He had a plan. This man, who I thought was so simple, so straightforward, had been playing a long game. He let me talk myself out, and when I was done, he just said, "The resort? Did you sleep with him?" The question hung in the air. The look in his eyes told me he already knew the answer. There was no point in lying anymore. My whole body sagged, and I finally whispered yes. He nodded once, a short, sharp gesture. He didn't explode. He didn't break anything. He just stood up, went to the closet, and pulled out a suitcase. He threw it on the bed. "Pack your things," he said. "I want you out of my house. Tonight." I was in shock. I never ever thought he would do that. I was the breadwinner. I paid the mortgage. In my arrogant, stupid mind, I thought that gave me power, some kind of control. I thought we would fight, we would go to therapy, we would figure out the mess I'd made. I never thought he would just end it. The fallout was fast and brutal. I left that night and went to a hotel. I called Mark. He didn't pick up. The next day, he sent me a short text saying he was going to try and save his own marriage and that he was sorry. Just like that, the one person I thought truly saw me was gone. I was completely alone. My husband filed for divorce immediately. His lawyer had everything: copies of my texts, a recording of my confession, my financial records. The simple man I had underestimated had been methodically building a case to destroy me. My world collapsed. My friends took sides. My work suffered. All the armor I had built for myself, the career, the money, was turned into a weapon and used against me. We ended up with 50/50 custody of the kids, which is the only thing that matters. But the final humiliation came with the finances. Because I earned so much more than him, I was ordered to pay him spousal support, a significant amount every single month. So now here we are. I work myself to the bone just to keep my head above water, to pay for my apartment and his house. He gets to live the exact same life he always wanted, working out, training a few clients, picking up the kids from school, only now I'm paying for it. He's the victim. The strong, stoic man who was wronged. He probably tells everyone he's a wreck, but from what I hear, he's never been happier. He thinks he won. He blew up my world, shattered the life I had built, and left me with the pieces. He's not wrong. He did. But he will never understand that he was the one who lit the fuse. He'll never see the thousands of tiny moments, the years of quiet neglect and intellectual loneliness that made the whole thing so fragile in the first place. He didn't just lose a wife. He lost a woman he never really knew. And I lost myself trying to be someone he could love, and then lost everything else when I finally found her.
Story 8.
I'm sure you've heard her side of the story. I know how she paints me. I'm the monster-in-law, the overbearing matriarch who ruined her perfect little family. It's an easy story to tell, and an even easier one to believe. But it's not the truth. The truth is, I was the only one trying to hold that family together. My son Michael is a good man. I know every mother says that, but it's true. He has a heart that's almost too big for his own good. He's kind and gentle, but he's also sensitive. He feels things so deeply, and he trusts people too easily. I've always had to be the strong one, the one who looks out for him, because he'd give his whole world to someone who didn't deserve it. And that's exactly what he did. When he met her, Sarah, I tried to be open-minded. I really did. But the red flags were there from the very beginning. She told us all these stories about her past, a long list of bad relationships with narcissists and toxic men. I remember thinking, if everyone you've ever dated is a narcissist, maybe you're the common denominator. But Michael was so happy. He said she was different. So I welcomed her. I invited her to family dinners. I taught her my recipes. I treated her like a daughter. But I saw things that worried me. She didn't really have her own life. As soon as she started dating Michael, she dropped all her old friends and hobbies to become whatever she thought he wanted. It wasn't healthy. It was like she was a chameleon playing a part. And sometimes the mask would slip. The fight started pretty quickly. He would call me sometimes in the middle of the night, completely distraught. She would get an idea in her head and just explode. The smallest disagreement would turn into a huge drama. She was always threatening to leave, packing a bag and running off to a hotel. He would be a wreck, blaming himself, and I would have to talk him down for hours. He was trying so hard to give her a stable life, something she clearly never had. It all came to a head one night. They had a massive fight, the worst one yet. Michael finally had enough of the constant threats and told her to just go. He actually kicked her out of the house. He was heartbroken, but I thought maybe this is for the best. Maybe he finally sees how unstable she is. 3 days later, he called me. He told me he'd bought a ring and proposed. I couldn't believe it. He said he thought a real commitment, a real show of stability, was what she needed to feel secure. And of course, she accepted the engagement ring. She knew she had him. Things were quiet for a little while, but the pattern started again. More fights, more drama. Then came the final dramatic exit. She packed her bags and checked into a hotel, telling him it was over for good this time. Michael was about to give up. He was exhausted. And then, like a miracle for her and a nightmare for him, she called him from the hotel room. She was pregnant. What was he supposed to do? He's an honorable man. I raised him to take responsibility for his actions. So he did what he thought was the right thing. They went down to the courthouse and got married before the baby was born. No party, no celebration. It was a business transaction to give his child a name. He was determined to make it work for the baby. I knew then and there that my job was far from over. I knew he was going to need me more than ever. When my grandson Leo was born, I packed a bag and drove straight there. Michael called me and he sounded terrified. He said Sarah was a wreck. And he was right. When I walked into that house, it was pure chaos. Dishes piled up, laundry everywhere. And Sarah, she was a ghost. She was crying all the time, just hysterical. She could barely hold her own son. She was drowning in what everyone now calls postpartum depression, and my grandson was paying the price. So I did what any loving grandmother would do. I rolled up my sleeves and I took over. I sent Michael to get some sleep. I cleaned the house and I took care of that baby. I made sure Leo was fed, that he was clean, that he was held and comforted. Sarah was trying to breastfeed, but it wasn't working. The baby was crying from hunger and she was crying from stress and pain. It was a disaster. I helped her set up a pumping schedule so that I, or Michael, could give the baby a bottle and she could get some rest. It was the only practical solution. Sometimes I had to physically take Leo from her arms. She would be holding him while she was sobbing, just shaking, and her anxiety was making him scream. A baby can feel that. So I'd say, "Here, honey, let me take him. You go take a shower and calm down." I was trying to help. I was trying to teach her. My own son understood. He saw how much she was struggling. He would sneak the baby to her later when she was calm and had a moment of clarity. He was just trying to keep the peace. I stayed for 2 months. 2 months of cooking, cleaning, and taking care of a newborn around the clock while also trying to counsel a hysterical new mother. It was exhausting, thankless work. I saw that she didn't just need help with the baby. She needed guidance on how to be part of a family. Our family. We're close. We talk, we support each other, we respect our elders. She came from a broken home and didn't understand that. One afternoon when the baby was sleeping and Michael was at the store, I decided it was time for a real talk, woman to woman. I sat her down at the kitchen table. I made her a cup of tea. I told her gently that being a mother was the hardest job in the world and that she wasn't failing, she just needed to accept help. I explained that in our family we lean on each other, and that means listening to the wisdom of those who have done it before. I told her I wasn't trying to criticize her, I was trying to give her the tools she needed to succeed for Leo's sake. I was offering her my support, my lifetime of experience. I thought it was a breakthrough moment. I thought she would finally understand that I was on her side. She just stared at me, her eyes cold. She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She just looked right through me and said, "I don't need your wisdom. I need you to leave my house." I just sat there holding my lukewarm cup of tea and stared at her. It was like a slap in the face. After 2 months of breaking my back for her child, for my son, that's what I got. Not a thank you, not a "I appreciate you, but leave my house." The venom in her voice was something I'd never heard before. It was cold, hard, and final. I felt the air get sucked out of the room. All the warmth I had tried to build, all the support I had offered just vanished. Before I could even respond, we heard the key in the front door. Michael walked in holding a bag of groceries, a big smile on his face. The smile died the second he saw us. He could feel the tension. It was thick enough to choke on. "What's going on?" he asked, looking back and forth between us. Sarah didn't even look at him. She just kept her eyes locked on me. "I've asked your mother to leave." she said, her voice flat. Michael looked at me confused. Mom, what happened? I stood up, my hand shaking a little. I have no idea, Michael. We were just talking. I was telling her how much we all love her and want to help her, and she just turned on me. I tried to keep my voice steady to show him I was the calm, rational one. She seems to think my help is some kind of attack. That's when Sarah finally broke. She stood up so fast her chair scraped against the floor. An attack! You call this help? She finally yelled, her voice cracking. You haven't helped. You've invaded. You took over my home. You took over my child. You walk in here and decide I'm not a good enough mother, so you just push me aside. I can't hold my own son without you hovering over me, telling me I'm doing it wrong, that my anxiety is hurting him. I was stunned. This was how she saw it. My 2 months of thankless round-the-clock work to save her and my grandson were an invasion. My guidance was abuse. She was twisting everything. I was trying to give you a break, I said, my voice rising to match hers. You were a mess. You couldn't stop crying. The baby was screaming. What was I supposed to do? Just stand by and watch you both fall apart? You were supposed to ask me what I needed, she shrieked. You were supposed to support me, not replace me. You act like he's your baby, not mine. She turned to Michael, her eyes pleading. Are you hearing this? Are you going to let her talk to me this way in our own home? Are you ever going to stand up for me? Michael just stood there frozen like a deer in headlights. He looked from her face to mine, his expression pained. He hates conflict. His gentle heart can't take it. He just wants everyone to be happy. Sarah, let's all just calm down, he stammered. Mom was just trying to... But he never got to finish. The look on Sarah's face when he said that, it was pure devastation. It was the moment she gave up on him. She didn't scream anymore. She just shook her head, a single tear rolling down her cheek. I see, she whispered. Then she turned and walked upstairs without another word. That was the end. I packed my bags in silence while Michael tried to talk to her through the locked bedroom door. He begged her to come out to talk about it. But there was nothing left to say. She had poisoned his mind, convinced his gentle heart that my love was control. She used me as the scapegoat for a marriage that was broken from the very start. I kissed my son goodbye on the cheek and told him to call me. Driving away from that house, I didn't feel angry anymore. I just felt a deep, profound sadness for him and for my grandson trapped in there with her. The next few weeks were a nightmare of silence and short, strained phone calls. Michael would tell me they were working on it, but his voice was hollow. I knew it was over. Then the call I was dreading finally came. He was sobbing so hard I could barely understand him. She had filed for divorce. And the reason she gave him his failure to stand up for her against his family. Against me. A mother who loved them. A woman who sacrificed 2 months of her life for them. That was my reward. It got uglier from there. She cut me off completely. My calls went to voicemail. My texts were left unread. The final petty little knife twist came one evening when I was scrolling through my phone. I noticed our family group chat was quieter than usual. Then I realized why. She had left the group. No goodbye, no explanation, just gone. Such a childish, passive-aggressive display. It was her final act of cutting Michael's family out of her life, and by extension out of Leo's life. Now she's raising my grandson away from his family, denying him the love and support system he deserves. She posts pictures online of their new life, flaunting her freedom and her healing. She's the brave single mom who escaped a toxic situation. And I'm the villain. I'm left with a broken-hearted son who I have to painstakingly piece back together, and a grandson who I barely get to see, who will grow up hearing stories about his horrible, controlling grandmother. She destroyed my son's family, and somehow I am the one who gets the blame. People will always believe her side of the story because it's simpler. It's easier to point a finger at the meddling mother-in-law, but they didn't see the late-night phone calls, the unstable girl who ran to hotels, the hysterical new mother who couldn't cope. They didn't see me cleaning her house, feeding her child, and trying to teach her how to be a part of a family that loved her. All I ever did was try to hold it all together. All I ever did was love them too much. And for that I lost everything.
Story 9.
My husband Mark thinks I cheated on him. He's probably telling his friends and family that I had an affair, and that's why he's filing for divorce. It's a simple, clean story, and it makes him the good guy. The truth is, our marriage was a corpse long before I ever sent a text message to another man. I was just the one who finally got tired of pretending to be in mourning. For the last 10 years, we've been roommates. Not even good roommates, just two people who split the bills and shared a mortgage. We didn't talk, not really. Our conversations were about logistics. Who's picking up the kids? Did you remember to take the trash out? The roof is going to need replacing in a few years. I felt like another item on his household checklist. Fix the gutters, pay the property taxes, make sure the wife is functioning. He's a good man in the way people describe a reliable car. He starts every morning, he doesn't break down, he gets you from A to B, but there's no joy in it. He never looked at me like he actually wanted times me. He just looked at me like he was used to me being there. The silence was the worst part. We could sit in the same room for hours and not say a word. I'd try, I really would. I'd ask about his day and he'd say, fine. I'd try to tell him a funny story and he'd give me a tight little smile while staring at the TV. It was like shouting into a void. After a while, you just stop shouting. You start to believe you don't have a voice. We went to counseling once a few years ago. It was my idea, of course. For him, it was just another problem to solve. He sat there, answered the therapist's questions like he was on a job interview, and waited for her to give him a list of instructions to fix me. He never understood that it wasn't about fixing anything. It was about feeling something. We stopped going after a few sessions. It was a waste of money, he said. I was so lonely I thought it was going to physically kill me. You can't understand that kind of loneliness unless you've lived it, sleeping next to someone every night and feeling like you're on a different planet. Then I met Jack at my new job. It wasn't some grand romance. It was just easy. We were working on a project together and he made a stupid joke. I laughed a real laugh and it felt like a muscle I hadn't used in years. We started talking more at work and then it turned into texting. It was nothing serious. We'd send memes, complain about our boss, talk about what we were watching on TV. He was just a friend. But he was a friend who listened. He asked questions and actually waited for the answers. When I said something I thought was clever, he'd text back LOL or tell me I was funny. It was a tiny little spark of light in the gray, suffocating fog of my home life. Was it flirty sometimes? I guess in a harmless way. It was fun. It was a reminder that I was still a person. I wasn't just a mom, a wife, a household manager. I was someone who could be interesting and witty. I was alive. Of course, Mark found out. And he didn't find out because I told him, which I should have. He found out because he waited until I was asleep and went through my phone. He didn't come to me and say, "Hey, I'm feeling insecure," or "I'm worried about us." He went behind my back like a spy, looking for evidence to prove his worst fears. The confrontation was awful. He didn't ask me why. He didn't ask if I was unhappy. He just held up the phone like a prosecutor revealing the murder weapon. He accused me of sleeping with Jack, of planning to leave him. His paranoia was suffocating. So I did something stupid. I panicked. He was watching my phone like a hawk, and every notification from Jack Harkness sent him into a rage. I changed Jack's name in my contacts to a woman's name. I just wanted to stop the constant third degree. I also deleted some of our conversations. Not because there was anything incriminating in them, but because I knew Mark would twist every single word. There was one text Jack sent on Thanksgiving when I was stressing about the turkey. I sent him a picture of my messy kitchen, and he wrote back, "That level of turkey prep is so hot." Jack's a goofy guy. He says weird stuff like that. To Mark, it was a confession of a passionate affair. I was just trying to protect a simple friendship from my husband's insane jealousy. I was trying to keep that one small, happy part of my life for myself. That was the real start of the war. My phone became the battlefield. He demanded I give him the passcode and allow him unrestricted access to everything: my texts, my emails, my social media. He wanted to read every word I typed to anyone. He said it was the only way he could ever trust me again. But it wasn't about trust. It was about control. It was about him punishing me for finding a moment of happiness outside of him. I refused. That phone, that little bit of privacy, was the only thing I had left that was mine. It wasn't about Jack anymore. It was about me refusing to be treated like a prisoner in my own life. I told him no. I told him he needed to get help for his paranoia and his insecurity, and that my privacy wasn't the price for his peace of mind. The fights got worse. He'd follow me from room to room, demanding the phone, his voice getting louder and colder. Last night was the worst it's ever been. I told him for what felt like the 100th time that he was not going to get my passcode. I was done being interrogated. "This isn't about the phone, Mark," I said, my voice shaking. "This is about you never seeing me, and I'm not going to let you control me now." He just stopped. He wasn't yelling anymore. All the rage drained from his face and was replaced by something else, something terrifyingly calm. He looked at me, really looked at me for the first time in what felt like years. And all I saw was ice. "You're right," he said, his voice flat. "It isn't about the phone." He picked up his own phone from the counter. "There are other ways to find out what's going on." I watched him as he tapped on his screen, his thumb moving with a purpose I hadn't seen in him for years. My stomach twisted. He wasn't searching for information. He was searching for a person. It took me a second to realize what he was doing. He was on social media looking for Jack. Not Jack, but Jack's wife. He was going to find her. He was going to blow everything up. "Mark, don't," I whispered, a real primal fear cutting through my anger. "Please. You have no idea what you're doing." He didn't look up from his phone. "I know exactly what I'm doing." You wanted to hide things. Fine. Let's bring it all into the light. He found her profile. I saw a picture of her and Jack with their 2 kids at a pumpkin patch. A happy family. A normal family. My heart hammered against my ribs. This wasn't about us anymore. He was pulling innocent people into his war. She has nothing to do with this, I pleaded, taking a step towards him. This is between you and me. He finally looked at me and his eyes were completely empty. You made it about them when you started texting her husband behind my back. He tapped out a message, his face illuminated by the cold blue light of the screen. I felt like I was going to be sick. I didn't know what he wrote, but I could imagine. Something cold and factual, designed for maximum damage. Asterisk. Your husband has been having an inappropriate relationship with my wife. You should check his phone. Asterisk. He hit send, then set his phone down on the counter with a quiet final click. He had just dropped a bomb, and now he was waiting for it to go off. It didn't take long, maybe 15 minutes. My phone buzzed. It was Jack. I answered, my hand shaking. What the hell did you do? He whispered, his voice frantic. My wife is losing her mind. She just got a message from your husband. He sent her screenshots. Screenshots, you idiot. Why didn't you delete everything? The blood drained from my face. Screenshots. Mark hadn't just found the text. He had documented them. The goofy joke about the turkey, the late-night complaints about work. He'd saved them like ammunition. He'd been preparing for this. I'm so sorry, Jack, I stammered. I had no idea he would. My life is blowing up right now because of you, he cut me off, his voice cracking. I can't talk to you. Ever again. Lose my number. He hung up. And just like that, it was over. The one small friendship, the one little escape was gone. Erased. I stood in the kitchen, the silence rushing back in heavier and more menacing than ever before. Mark was watching me, his expression unreadable. There, he said, as if he'd just finished a chore. Now we know. Know what, Mark? I snapped, the shock finally giving way to a white-hot fury. What do we know? That you're cruel enough to ruin someone's life just to prove a point. That you're a coward who attacks other people because you can't handle your own feelings. He didn't even flinch. I did what I had to do. You refused to be honest with me. It was his new mantra. He wasn't a paranoid, controlling husband. He was a rational man forced into a corner. He had calmly and logically detonated our lives, and now he was standing back pretending to be a victim of the blast. The next few days were a special kind of hell. We lived in the same house but didn't speak. The air was thick with hate. I felt like I was suffocating. I went to work and pretended everything was fine, terrified that at any moment HR would call me into an office. I imagined the whispers. Jack and I worked in the same department. Mark hadn't just destroyed a friendship. He'd jeopardized my career. All to win a fight I didn't even know we were having. A week later, I came home to an envelope on the kitchen table with my name on it. It wasn't sealed. Inside were divorce papers. He hadn't even had the decency to hand them to me to look me in the eye. It was just another piece of administrative work left for me to handle. Underneath the papers was a sticky note in his neat block handwriting. Asterisk. I've moved some things to the guest room. I'll be staying there until we sort this out. I think it's for the best. Asterisk. For the best. After 17 years of marriage, this is how it ended. With a stack of legal documents and a note like he was reminding me to pick up milk. He's telling people I'm showing my true colors now. He's right about that. He is finally seeing them. He's seen the color of rage from a woman who screamed for his attention for a decade only to be met with silence. He's seeing the pain of a wife who was treated like a faulty appliance that needed to be managed, not a person who needed to be loved. And he's seeing the fury of a human being whose entire world he methodically set on fire just to prove he was right all along. He tells his story, and it's neat and tidy. The wife had an emotional affair, she lied and hid it, and the heartbroken husband had no choice but to end the marriage. But his story leaves out the years of crushing loneliness. It leaves out the suffocating quiet of a home where no one ever really talked. It leaves out a man who could diagnose a problem with the roof from a single water stain, but couldn't see that his own wife was drowning right in front of him. He thinks this was all about Jack. He honestly believes that if he had just gotten into my phone and read all my messages, he could have fixed the problem. He could have eliminated the threat, and things would have gone back to normal. He never understood. It was never about Jack. It was about the silence he left, the void he created. Jack didn't break our marriage. He just happened to be the person who showed me what it felt like to not be alone. And for that, Mark could never forgive me. It was always about him. It was always about him.
Story Teen.
My husband probably told you his story. The one where he's the hero, the wronged man who came home to find his wife with someone else. I'm sure he painted me as a monster, a snake, and maybe I am. But you only heard what he wanted you to hear. You heard about the fire and the fight. You didn't hear about the silence. For years, all I heard was silence. Let me tell you about my birthday this year. It started like every other day for the past decade. I woke up alone. My husband, let's call him David, was already gone for work. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. It was a text from him. 3 letters, happy birthday. Not happy birthday, honey. Not an emoji. Just the kind of text you send to a coworker you barely know. That was it. That was the celebration. He hadn't mentioned it the night before, and I knew he wouldn't mention it when he got home. There wouldn't be a card or a badly wrapped gift or even a suggestion to go out for dinner. For a long time now, I've felt more like a household appliance than a person. I'm the Roomba that keeps the floors clean, the dishwasher that makes sure there are plates, the slow cooker that has a hot meal ready at 6 p.m. sharp. I manage the bills, I schedule the parent-teacher conferences for our daughter, I remember his mother's birthday and buy the gift. I keep the entire machine of our lives running smoothly, and I do it so well that I've become completely invisible. David comes home, sees a clean house and a fed child, and assumes it all just happens. He stopped seeing the person doing it all a very, very long time ago. He stopped seeing times me asterisk. It's a slow death, that kind of invisibility. You start to wonder if you're even real. You talk and nobody seems to hear you. You try to start a conversation about your day and he just grunts while scrolling through his phone. You put on a new dress and he doesn't notice. You cry quietly in the bathroom so you don't disturb him. You become a ghost in your own home. Then I met someone. We'll call him Alex. It wasn't planned. It wasn't something I went looking for. He's the dad of one of my daughter's friends. We started talking at school pickups. Just small talk at first. But then he started asking me questions. About my day, about my interest. He remembered that I liked gardening and asked me about my tomato plants a week later. It was such a small thing, but it felt like a miracle. Someone was actually listening. Our chats turned into texts. He sent me funny articles he thought I'd like. He sent me paragraphs, not acronyms. He told me I was witty. He told me I was smart. When I made a joke, he actually laughed. He made me feel like the person I used to be before I got lost in my marriage. He saw me. Was it wrong, God? Of course it was. I knew it was. I felt guilty every single second. But it was also like taking a deep breath after being held underwater for years. It was a spark. It was a reminder that I was still in here, that the woman who liked to laugh and talk about books and feel beautiful hadn't completely disappeared. On my birthday, after I got that happy birthday text, something in me just broke. I was sitting in a silent house, a house I kept perfect for a man who wouldn't even type out the full words, "Happy birthday" for me. An hour later, my phone buzzed again. It was Alex. It was a long message telling me he hoped I had a wonderful day, that I deserved to be celebrated. And he mentioned a funny story I'd told him last week. He remembered. A relative stranger remembered more about me than my own husband. I made a decision. A reckless, stupid, selfish decision. I told him David was working late and asked if he wanted to come over for a drink to celebrate my pathetic birthday, I joked. It was supposed to be a small act of rebellion. One afternoon where I felt like a person, not a function. It wasn't about sex, not really. It was about connection. It was about having someone look me in the eye and make me feel like I mattered on a day I felt completely and utterly forgotten. He came over. We talked. We laughed so much. He brought a stupid little cupcake with a single candle on it. It was more effort than David had put into my birthday in 5 years. One thing led to another. The connection I was so desperate for became physical. We ended up in my bedroom, and his clothes ended up on the floor mixed with mine. It was careless and fast, and for a few minutes I didn't think about my grocery list, or the dry cleaning, or the silence. We were in the shower together, washing away the guilt, laughing about something ridiculous. The water was hot, the steam was thick, and for the first time in forever I felt happy. Genuinely, uncomplicatedly happy. It was a bubble of joy, and I knew it was temporary, but I was so grateful for it. That's when I heard it. A sound from downstairs that didn't belong. The distinct sound of a key turning in the front door lock. My blood went cold. It was too early. David wasn't supposed to be home for hours. He's early, the thought screamed in my head. He came home to surprise me. The irony was so cruel, it almost made me laugh. The one day he decides to do something special is the one day I've ruined everything. The bubble didn't just pop. It exploded, and all that was left was ice-cold terror. I grabbed a towel, my heart hammering against my ribs. Alex wrapped one around his waist, his face a mask of confusion and panic. I stepped out of the bathroom first, trying to form a lie, any lie that could possibly explain this. But the words died in my throat the moment I saw him. David was standing in our living room. He wasn't crying, he wasn't yelling. That would have been better. Instead, he just looked at me. His eyes were completely flat like slate. There was nothing behind them. No hurt, no sadness, just a terrifying emptiness. He looked right through me as if I was already gone and said, "Happy birthday." The words were so quiet, so devoid of any emotion, that they chilled me more than any scream ever could. That's when I smelled it. Acrid smoke like a barbecue gone wrong. It was coming from the open front door. I looked past David's shoulder and saw it. There was a fire in our driveway. Not just a little fire, but a bonfire. For a second, my brain just refused to understand what I was seeing. Then I recognized the shape of a shirt, the dark leather of a wallet curling in the flames. He had taken Alex's clothes, his phone, his keys, and he had set them on fire. This wasn't a man heartbroken by betrayal. This was something else entirely. This was calculated. This was a performance. This was a man who solves problems by setting fires. My shock curdled into pure, undiluted terror. Who was this person I had shared a bed with for 15 years? Alex came out of the bedroom behind me, completely lost. "What's going on?" he whispered. David didn't even look at me. He kept his eyes on Alex. "Your clothes are in the driveway," he said, his voice still unnervingly calm. "You should probably go get them." The look on Alex's face was absolute horror. He was trapped. Naked but for one of my husband's towels. My husband, who was now dangling Alex's car keys from his finger. Holding them like a trophy he'd just won. In that moment, I wasn't trying to protect my lover. I was trying to de-escalate what felt like a hostage situation. I was trying to stop the terrifyingly calm man in my living room from doing something much, much worse. "David, please," I begged. "Just let him go. This is my fault." He finally looked at me, a flicker of something ugly in his eyes. "Oh, I know. I'll get him some sweats," I said, moving toward our bedroom. "Just some pants so he can leave." "Please. I just wanted to get Alex out of there safely to end this nightmare." But David moved, blocking my path to the bedroom. He was enjoying this. He was savoring the power he had over us. "What about protecting me?" he asked, a sneer twisting his face. "In my own house, what about that?" I was speechless. He was the one who had set a fire on our property. He was the one standing there like a predator, enjoying the fear he was causing. How could he possibly see himself as the victim? Alex, seeing that I was getting nowhere, took a step forward. He just wanted to leave. "Look, man," he started, "just give me a pair of pants. I'll walk home. I'll do whatever you want." He took one step too close. It happened so fast. David didn't just push him. He dropped the keys and swung. The sound of his fist hitting Alex's face was sickeningly wet and loud. Alex stumbled back, clutching his eye, the towel almost falling off him. A man who was half naked, unarmed, and just trying to cover himself. A man who posed zero threat. And my husband hit him. Hard. I saw it then. The violence he was capable of simmering just under that quiet surface I'd mistaken for calm strength for all these years. This wasn't the righteous anger of a betrayed husband. This was a monster. "Get out," David spat, his voice finally breaking with rage. He pointed at Alex. "And you," he said, turning to me, his face twisted with a hatred I'd never seen before. "You get out too." He shoved Alex toward the door, and then he shoved me. I stumbled out onto the front porch, the rough concrete scraping my bare feet. He threw Alex's keys onto the grass and slammed the door. The lock clicked shut. And there we were. Me and Alex standing on our front lawn in nothing but towels. The neighbors' curtains were twitching. A bonfire of clothes, lighter fluid, and dignity was smoldering in my driveway. Alex's eye was already starting to swell and turn a dark, ugly purple. He had a black eye. He had no phone, no wallet, and his car was locked. The shame was so immense I thought it would swallow me whole. But underneath it was something else, a cold, hard clarity. The affair was my mistake. It was a selfish, messy, horrible mistake born out of loneliness. But this was him. The man who would set a fire. The man who would punch an unarmed person. The man who would throw his wife out of her home half naked on her birthday. He thinks he's the hero of this story. The man who took a stand. He probably tells people he kicked a cheater out of his house. He doesn't tell them he revealed himself as a violent, controlling monster. He thinks the story is about what I did in our bed. He doesn't understand that the real story is about what he did in our driveway. He didn't just burn some clothes. He burned down any illusion I had left of the man I married. He validated every single fear I ever had about being trapped with him. I'm not sorry for wanting to feel alive. I am sorry for the pain I caused. But I am not sorry that I'm not in that house anymore. Because I wasn't just kicked out. I was set free. I just had to see the monster first to realize I was in a cage all along.
Story 11.
I know what he's telling everyone. I know what he probably posted online. He's the good guy, the loving husband who got his heart broken by a cheating wife just a few months after their wedding. It's a simple story, and in a way it's true. I did those things. I'm the villain. It's easier for him to see it that way, and honestly, it's easier for me too. But it's not the whole story. We were together for 8 years. When I met him, he was this force of nature. He had a big goofy laugh hair that was always a mess and a habit of walking around barefoot. He was a hippie soul, and I fell for it hard. He made me feel free. He didn't care about plans or careers or what anyone thought. He was just pure chaotic energy, and I loved it. But you can't build a life on chaotic energy. Love is great, but love doesn't pay the bills or clean the bathroom. Slowly, without even realizing it at first, our life became a project and I was the manager. He was brilliant, but he had no drive. He'd leave dishes in the sink until they grew science experiments. He'd spend entire weekends gaming with his friends, perfectly happy in his own little world. I was the one who set up a budget. I was the one who nagged him about finding a real job with benefits. He calls it whipping him into shape. I call it dragging him, kicking and screaming into basic adulthood. For years I told myself this was what I wanted. I was making a partner, building a future. I convinced myself that I loved the idea of a house in the country with a couple of kids and a dog. It was the dream, right? But his family never quite saw it that way. To them, especially to his father, I was the uptight city girl who was ruining their fun-loving son. I'll never forget the first time I met his dad. I was wearing a nice top with long sleeves, and he looked me up and down and said to my husband, "Son, I don't trust anyone who covers their arms." He laughed, but he wasn't really joking. They saw me as the person who was sanding down all his rough, interesting edges. The worst part is they were right. I did it. I pushed him to be more responsible, more organized, more stable. And it worked. He got the good job. He started helping around the house. He became the perfect, reliable man. But somewhere along the way, I lost all respect for him. He became so compliant. He'd just agree with whatever I said. He'd let me make all the decisions. He says I let him walk all over me, but that's not what it felt like. It felt like I was the only one walking, and he was just following a few steps behind, doing whatever I told him to. The man I fell in love with would have argued with me, challenged me, told me I was being crazy. This new version just said, "Okay, whatever you think is best." We got married last October. It was a beautiful wedding. Everyone said we were the perfect couple. A few weeks later, we were talking to a mortgage broker about a home buyer loan. He was so excited, showing me pictures of houses with big yards. All I could hear was a cell door slamming shut. This was it. The final step in a life I had built for someone else, a life I realized I didn't want at all. I was suffocating. I looked at this wonderful, kind, passive man I had created, and I felt nothing. The affair was a grenade. A stupid, selfish, destructive act. It lasted less than a week. It was with a guy who didn't know me as a wife or a project manager. He just saw me. He made me laugh, and for a few days, I didn't have to be in charge of anyone. I felt like myself again, the person I was before I spent 8 years molding another human being. It was a terrible thing to do, but it was like a gasp for air after holding my breath for years. When it was over, I knew I couldn't go back. The life I had with my husband was a lie, and I had to end it. I sat him down on the couch, the same one where we'd planned our wedding. My heart was pounding. I tried to do it right, to be honest, without being cruel. "I'm not happy," I said. "I feel like I've been trying so hard to make you into this perfect husband that I've dulled your spirit. I've erased the man I fell in love with." I told him I didn't lust after him anymore, that our connection was gone. I was telling him that our entire dynamic was broken. I was confessing that I had ruined us. And all he heard was that I didn't like that he played video games, or that he needed to go to the gym more. He started defending himself, listing all the things he did for me, all the ways he was a good husband. He couldn't see the real problem. He saw a perfect life that I was suddenly trying to ruin for no reason. I saw a perfect lie that was killing me. The conversation went nowhere. He just sat there completely bewildered while I felt the walls closing in even tighter. He couldn't understand, and I was too much of a coward to just say the one thing that would make it all make sense to him. He left the house for a while to clear his head, and I just sat there, feeling like the worst person on earth. He came back a few days later. The sad, confused look was gone. His face was a hard mask. He didn't look at me like his wife anymore. He looked at me like a problem he needed to solve, like a suspect. He'd been talking to people, getting advice from strangers on the internet, I'm sure. The soft, compliant man I'd spent years creating was gone, and in his place was someone I didn't recognize at all. He stood in the doorway and just stared at me, and I knew this wasn't going to be a conversation. It was going to be an interrogation. "Are you cheating on me?" That was the first thing he said. "No, hello, no, we need to talk." He just stood there with his arms crossed, his voice flat and cold. It wasn't a question born from heartbreak. It was an accusation. He already knew the answer. He just needed to hear me say it out loud. All my attempts to explain the deep, complicated rot at the center of our relationship had been a waste of breath. He'd boiled it all down to the simplest, ugliest explanation, the one that made him the victim and me the monster. And in that moment I was just so tired. Tired of managing, tired of explaining, tired of trying to get him to see the big picture he was never going to see. So I gave him the confession he wanted. "Yes," I said. My voice didn't even shake. It felt like I was talking about someone else. Something inside him just broke. The cold, hard mask cracked, and for a second I saw the man I'd hurt. It was a flash of pure pain, and it was horrible. I deserved his anger. I deserved his hate. I deserved every terrible thing he was about to say to me. He just stared at me, his mouth slightly open as if the single word had knocked the wind out of him. Then the anger flooded in to replace the pain. With who, he demanded. "It doesn't matter. It's over." It was a symptom, not the... "I don't care about your excuses," he cut me off, his voice rising. "Who was it?" I told him. It was no one he knew, which was a small mercy. The name meant nothing to him, but saying it out loud made it real. It sealed the ugliness of it. He took a step back, shaking his head, and let out this hollow, bitter laugh. After everything, he whispered, "After 8 years. We just got married." He said it like I had forgotten. Like the wedding vows were a magic spell that should have fixed the fact that I was drowning. The fight, if you can call it that, didn't last long. It was ugly and brutal. I didn't defend myself. What was there to say I had done the one thing you can't take back? I had given him a simple reason to hate me, and he grabbed onto it like a lifeline. Finally, he pointed toward the door. "Get out. This is my house too," I said, a weak flicker of defiance. "Not anymore," he said, his voice deadly quiet. "Get your things and go. I want you gone by the time I get back." He walked out, slamming the door behind him. The sound echoed through the house that was supposed to be our future. I stood there for a long time in the silence, feeling nothing and everything all at once. Packing felt surreal. Every object I touched was a memory. The stupid mug he'd bought me on our first vacation. The framed photo from our wedding on the nightstand, 2 smiling strangers. Leaving our home felt like both an eviction and an escape. I walked out the door with a single suitcase and didn't look back. I called my mom, crying so hard I could barely speak, and she told me to just come. My family was heading to a cabin in the mountains for the week, and I could join them. A few hours later, I was in the back of their car watching the city and the life I'd built shrink in the rearview mirror until it was gone. The trip to the mountains was the first time I had been truly alone in my own head in almost a decade. For 8 years, my thoughts had been full of him, his schedule, his career, his moods, our budget, our future. I was constantly managing, planning, pushing. Up there with nothing but pine trees and cold, clean air, there was silence. I didn't have to manage anyone. I didn't have to perform. I just had to times be asterisk. I took long walks by myself, feeling the crunch of snow under my boots. I sat by the fire and stared into the flames for hours. For the first time, I could honestly ask myself what times I wanted. And I didn't have an answer. But I knew with absolute certainty that what I'd just left behind wasn't it. The affair was the escape hatch, but the prison was the life I'd so carefully constructed. There was no going back. A few weeks later, his lawyer contacted mine. He was filing for divorce. He wanted it uncontested. He didn't want a thing from me other than for me to be gone. It was a strange kind of relief. An uncontested divorce is my final act of management, a clean, efficient end to a project that should have been scrapped years ago. I signed the papers without a fight. He will always need a villain to make sense of this. I understand that. He needs to believe that we had a perfect marriage and I threw it all away for a meaningless fling with some random guy. It's a much easier story for him to live with. It's easier than him looking back and seeing that I slowly erased the man he was. It's easier than him understanding that his passivity and my need for control created a dynamic that suffocated us both. The truth is, our perfect marriage was the one thing that was killing me. I looked at the next 40 years of being a capable, responsible manager for a kind, compliant man I no longer respected, and I couldn't breathe. I did a terrible, unforgivable thing. But I had to cheat my way out just to survive. He thinks I blew up his life. Maybe someday he'll realize I just set us both free from a beautifully decorated cage we had built together. Or maybe he won't. Either way, I'm the bad guy. And I finally made my peace with that.
Story 12.
I'm sure you've heard his side of the story. I'm the wife, the one he calls Dub-Dub, the woman who lied for over 30 years. It's a simple story when he tells it. I cheated, I lied, he found out, and now our marriage is a sham. It's clean, it's easy, and it makes me the villain. But it's not the truth. Not the whole truth, anyway. To understand, you have to understand who I was back then. I was 20 years old when I went to South America. 20. I thought I was so grown up joining a volunteer program going to save the world. I wanted to prove to everyone, especially myself, that I was strong and independent. The reality was very different. The heat was suffocating. I didn't speak the language well. Every day was a struggle, and I was so lonely. The person I was, supposed to be this brave, adventurous woman, was just a scared girl who cried herself to sleep most nights. My boyfriend, my husband now, was back in the U.S. He'd write me these wonderful letters about his classes, his friends, his life. I loved getting them, but they also made me feel a million miles away. They were a reminder of a life I wasn't living, a world that was moving on without me. He couldn't possibly understand what it was like. He couldn't understand the isolation, the feeling of being completely invisible in a crowd of people. And then there was someone who did understand. A coworker in the program. It didn't start as anything big. It wasn't a plan. It was just a shared look when something went wrong. A laugh over a terrible meal. A hand on my shoulder when I was having a bad day. He was times there asterisk. He was real and in the present when my actual life felt like it was on hold. I wasn't looking for an affair. I was just looking for a friend, for someone to make the loneliness stop screaming in my head for a little while. It drifted from friendship into something more. It was a comfort, a way to feel something other than lost. I knew it was wrong, of course I did. I felt sick with guilt every single day. I wrote everything down in my diary. Every confusing thought, every moment of guilt, every bit of it. I had no one else to talk to. The diary was my only friend, the only place I could try to make sense of the person I was becoming. I didn't even recognize her myself. She was messy and selfish and weak. I hated her. Things got real when my boyfriend came to visit for the first time. Seeing him was like coming up for air after being underwater for too long. This was my real life. This was the man I loved. But having him there in that place, it just made everything so much worse. The guilt was a physical thing, like a stone in my stomach. I couldn't look him in the eye. After he left, I knew I had to do something. I couldn't live with the secret. In January, I sent him a letter. I told him I was seeing someone else. I couldn't bring myself to write the whole truth, all the ugly details from my diary. It was too much. I thought if I just told him a little bit, just cracked the door open on this horrible secret, he could help me shut it for good. I was hoping he would save me from myself. He called me after he got the letter. I remember standing in a hot, dusty office, the phone cord wrapped around my hand so tight my knuckles were white. His voice wasn't angry, not at first. It was just firm. Clear. He told me that if I wanted us to have a future, I had to end it. Right then. No excuses. He gave me a choice, an ultimatum. And honestly, it was the biggest relief of my life. He gave me a way out, a path back to him, back to the person I wanted to be. I grabbed onto it like a drowning woman. I promised him I'd end it, and I did. In my heart, in my head, it was over that second. I told him it was just a fling, that it didn't mean anything. Because that's what it had to be. In the story of the life I wanted with him, this affair could only be a small, stupid mistake. A footnote. So I packed all the other feelings, all the messy details into a box in my mind, and I locked it shut. When he visited the second time, it was different. I was myself again. I was his. The girl who wrote those diaries was gone. I left her behind in South America. We got married a few months after I came home. For the next 34 years, we built a life. A real life. We had kids, we bought a house, we had inside jokes and favorite restaurants. We were happy. That past that mistake, it wasn't a secret I was keeping. It was just gone. It was a blurry photo from an album I never looked at. I truly, genuinely forgot the details. My mind just wiped them away because they didn't fit into the beautiful life we had built. Then 3 years ago, he sat me down in the living room. He had this serious look on his face, and I actually got a little excited. I thought, finally he wants to have one of those deep talks people are always talking about. He wants to connect. I leaned forward, ready to listen. And then he said he wanted to talk about my time in South America. I just stared at him. I was so confused. That was 35 years ago, I said. It wasn't a deflection. It wasn't me being difficult. It was the honest-to-God truth of how I felt. It was another lifetime. It was about another person. It had absolutely nothing to do with us. With the 60-year-old woman sitting on the couch next to him. He didn't see it that way. My confusion just made him angry. He said I was minimizing what happened. The conversation didn't go well. For the next few weeks, there was a strange quiet in the house. He was distant, looking at me like he was trying to solve a puzzle. I tried to talk to him, but it was like he was behind a glass wall. One Saturday afternoon, I came home from the grocery store and the house was too quiet. I called his name, no answer. I checked the hole downstairs, then went up. I heard a noise from the attic, a scraping sound. I climbed the pull-down stairs and my heart just stopped. The attic was a mess of old boxes and forgotten things. And there, in the middle of it all, was my husband. He was sitting on the floor with a dusty cardboard box in front of him. A box I hadn't seen since we moved in 30 years ago. My box. He pulled out a small faded cloth-bound book. Then another. My diaries. He looked up at me, his face pale, and then he opened the first one to a random page. He didn't yell. He didn't even look angry, not really. He just looked empty. He opened the book and his voice was flat, hollow as he started to read an entry. The words were mine. I recognized the handwriting, but the person he was describing felt like a stranger. He read about a date, a kiss, a feeling of excitement mixed with guilt. It was the voice of a confused, lonely girl. "Stop," I whispered. "Please don't." He just turned a page. "This is from January 15th, 1984, he said, his voice as sharp as glass. "The day after I called you. The day after you promised me it was over." He read the entry aloud. It was about seeing the other man again. About how hard it was to say goodbye. About how it didn't feel over at all. My blood ran cold. I stared at him, my mind a complete blank. "I don't remember writing that," I said, and it was the truth. I didn't. In my memory, our phone call was a clean break. He gave me an ultimatum and I took it. End of story. But here was proof in my own hand that the story I'd lived with for 35 years was a lie. He kept reading. He read passages from February, from March. He read about my second visit with him and then an entry from the week after I got back about meeting the other man one last time. Every word he read was a hammer blow, shattering the foundation of the life I thought we had. He was reading the unedited, ugly reality that my mind had so carefully cut out and thrown away. I saw his face twist in pain as he read the words of the 2-0-year-old girl. And he aimed all that pain at the 6-0-year-old woman standing in front of him. Watching him, I finally understood. He wasn't just mad about an affair that happened decades ago. He was mourning. He was mourning the 34 years he believed he was married to one woman, only to find out she was someone else entirely. In his eyes, our entire life was built on a lie I told on a crackly phone line from South America. But he doesn't understand. I didn't lie. I times forgot, asterisk. My mind, in an act of self-preservation I didn't even know was happening, protected me. It protected times us, asterisk. It buried the details that would have destroyed us before we even started. It built a more palatable history, a simpler story, and I lived inside that story so completely that I forgot it wasn't the absolute truth. The person who wrote those things was a ghost. I'd spent my whole adult life making sure I was nothing like her. The argument that followed downstairs was the worst of our lives. He kept shouting, "Why? Why would you lie to me for all these years?" And all I could say was, I didn't remember. It sounded like such a pathetic excuse even to my own ears. How could a person forget something so big? But I had. I had packed her away, that weak, selfish girl, and slammed the door. After that day, the silence in our house was deafening. We slept in separate rooms. We were like two strangers living together, moving around each other, careful not to touch. I'd try to talk to him to explain, but he would just look at me with this hollowed-out expression. He was looking right through me at the ghosts from the diaries. He started questioning everything. Our wedding anniversary. Were you thinking of him then, a vacation we took? Was that a happy memory, or were you just pretending? Every good moment we'd ever had was now tainted suspect. I was watching our entire history crumble to dust in front of my eyes, and I couldn't do anything to stop it. I tried to apologize. I told him I was sorry for the pain I caused for what that girl did so long ago. But it wasn't enough. He didn't want an apology from me, the woman he'd been married to for 34 years. He wanted an apology for the lie, for the deception. And how can I apologize for a lie I didn't even know I was telling? About 6 months after he found the diaries, he told me he wanted a divorce. He said he couldn't live with a stranger. He said he didn't know who I was anymore. That was the moment my heart truly broke. Not in the attic, but right there in our kitchen, with the evening sun coming through the window, making everything look warm and normal when our world was ending. He says I stole his choice. That if he had known the whole truth back in 1984, he might have made a different decision. Maybe he would have. But that young, scared girl in a foreign country made the only choice she knew how to make. She chose the future she wanted more than anything. She chose times him asterisk. She clung to the one good, stable thing in her life and buried the mess she'd made to keep it. It wasn't malicious. It was survival. Now I'm sitting in an apartment that doesn't feel like home, surrounded by boxes from a life that feels like it belonged to someone else. He's still in the house we built together. Sometimes I let myself believe that he'll call that. He'll say he understands. That he realizes the 34 years of love, laughter, and life we shared are more real than the scribblings of a confused girl from half a lifetime ago. But I don't think he will. He's in love with the memory of a marriage, and he's angry at a ghost. I'm the one who's still here. I love him. I love the man he is, and I love the life we had. I just don't know how to make him see that I'm not the villain in those pages anymore. I haven't been for a very, very long time.